The distance between your outstretched arms is your height. You renew your skeleton every 10 years. Whoop, time to renew. You lose around 100 hairs every day, and that's totally normal. Humans are the only creatures who sleep on their backs for a long time. Koalas, like humans, have their own unique fingerprints. In a lifetime, the average person will walk the equivalent of 3 times around the world. A person can have from 250 to over 1,000 hairs in each eyebrow. Your eyebrows also have a lifespan, about 4 months for all the hairs to fall out and be replaced by new ones. Thank goodness. Your eyes are the only organ that doesn't grow with age. Human DNA is 96% similar to a chimpanzee, 90% similar to a cat, 70% to a slug, and 50% to a banana. That has appeal. You share 99.9% of your DNA with any random person on the planet. Your heart is the size of your fist. Your brain, 2 clenched fists. When you listen to music, your heartbeat syncs with its rhythm. You can't swallow and breathe at the same time. Trust me on that one. There are as many nerve cells in your brain as there are stars in our galaxy, about 100 billion. The popular belief that people only use 10% of their brain power is nothing but a myth. Even when you're resting or sleeping, more than 1/10 of your brain is working. You're more likely to get attracted to a person who thinks and looks the same as you. The belief that opposites attract isn't true. Your nose and ears are the only parts of your body that never stop growing. The human brain generates enough electricity to power a small light bulb. If your eye was a digital camera, it would have a resolution of 576 megapixels. Your tongue prints are also unique to you, but let's not lick the scanner. Scientists at the University of Pittsburgh found that blue and green-eyed people are less sensitive to pain than brown-eyed people. But lighter-colored eyes are more light-sensitive than dark ones. The microorganisms in the human body outnumber cells 10 to 1. Eye. About 6% of people can vibrate and rapidly shake their eyeballs back and forth. It doesn't mean something's not right with their eyes, it's just a unique trick they can perform. Good at parties, I suppose. Fun fact about bones. You know that your body is about 60% water, right? What's new here is that your bones are also in this too. About 25% of human bone mass is made up of water. Not all of your brain's regions are active all the time, but most work on this or that task 24/7. Every 2 minutes, people all over the world take more pictures than they did in the entire 19th century. However, there's nothing said about today's photos being any better. People are kind of programmed to return favors. This instinct probably developed when people needed to help one another to survive. Studies have proved that sneezing is your nose's way to reset. A sneeze reboots the cells that line the insides of your nose. They're called cilia. Sneezing is also one of the first defenses against bacteria and other, unwanted stuff. When the delicate nose lining gets tickled with a foreign substance, like pollen, dirt, or dust, it sends a signal to your brain. The brain informs your body it's time to sneeze. The part of your brain that's responsible for vision is actually in the back of your head. The right side of your brain controls the vision on the left side and vice versa. Okay, put down your phone and pay attention. Multitasking is actually impossible. Your brain only allows you to switch between different tasks really fast, but not to do them at the same time. Such context switching isn't ideal either. Studies show that, in this case, people make mistakes much more often. Plus, they need twice as long as usual to do things. So, focus. There is one exception, though. When you're engaged in some physical activity you've done many times before, you can simultaneously perform a mental task. That's why you can easily walk up the stairs or take a shower and think about problems at work. Now, food tastes better when someone else has made it. That's why a sandwich from a cafe looks more appetizing, even though you used the same ingredients. One study suggests it's because it takes time to make yourself a meal, so when you're ready to dig in, you don't feel all that excited. Your body contains enough blood vessels to wrap around the planet 2.5 times. You spend 4 months in each year asleep. In a lifetime, you rack up 26 years. Only 6 of those years will be spent dreaming. We forget 50% of a dream within 5 minutes of waking up. 10 minutes later, it's 90%. Each cell in your body contains 1.5 gigabytes of information. Do the math for your 100 trillion cells and see that you're one powerful walking computer. Your brain cools down when you yawn. Your ears work even when you're asleep, but your brain ignores the incoming information. The bumps on your tongue aren't taste buds. They're called papillae. Not all papillae contain taste buds, but those that do that have 1 to 5 in each. The atoms in your body are 99% empty, and yet you feel full after dinner. Now how is that? The brain grows for the first 18 years of life and then gets 5% smaller every 10 years after the age of 40. Well, that explains a lot, don't you think? We spend 10% of our waking hours with our eyes closed just from blinking. The muscles that work your fingers are actually in your forearm. Your foot is the same length as your forearm. Same ratio with your thumb and nose. Your toenails grow 3 times slower than your fingernails. Your lungs aren't identical. The right one has 3 lobes and the left one has 2. Your hair grows faster when you're sleeping. The only thing that grows faster than hair is bone marrow. Your body releases enough heat in a half an hour to boil 2 quarts of water. Your brain uses 20% of the energy your body generates. Your body uses more energy to cool itself on hot days than to warm up when it's cold. People can go much longer without food than without sleep. Stomach acid can dissolve metal. It's so strong that the stomach has to create a new lining every 3 to 4 days. So, what's eating you? Your stomach. In terms of muscle, your tongue is like an elephant trunk and an octopus arm. That's just wrong. Your nails are made of the same stuff as a rhino's horn and a horse's hoof. And the rhino wants it back. We have nails to protect our fingertips. Without them, you wouldn't be able to grip things as well. You use 200 muscles just to take 1 step and 50 muscles just to use chopsticks. You use only 2 fingers to play chopsticks. Most people speak about 125 words per minute. The brain can process 800 in the same time. Me, I can go 185 with wind gusts up to 250. Your skin completely renews itself every 27 days. Now, you can't tickle yourself. Your brain already knows of your intentions and prepares your body for it. Humans are the only species with an outline that separates the lips from the surrounding skin. Half the bones in your body are in your feet and hands. Come on, let's share, guys. Finally, cornflakes have more genes than people do. Your cereal has 32,000. You have 20,000. Your memory is affected by your body position. For example, you're much more likely to recall a situation where you waved to someone if you stand and wave again. Your brain has millions of neurons. They're all different, and the speed of the connection between them is different too. That's why you can recall some information faster than others. The brain itself, by the way, can't feel pain. It has no nerve endings of its own. People with red-colored hair are 1% of all people. 2% are natural blondes. Yeah, most people you see with these hair colors have dyed hair. Black is the most common hair color in the world. A human eye resembles a car engine. Both of them need liquid for good lubrication. The engine needs oil, and the eye needs tears. To make sure the eyes work right, tears are distributed all over them. That's why we blink more than 10,000 times a day. You know what? In 10 years from now, you'll be a completely different person. Well, at least your skeleton will be. To reach its adult size, your skeleton went through a process called modeling, which means the development of growth and formation. Turns out it regenerates completely once every 10 years or so. This entire process ensures you always have healthy bone cells, which can support you and provide calcium to your body. And speaking of ways the body regenerates, every second you make 25 million new cells. I'll do the math for you. Okay, that means in about 15 seconds, you'll have made more cells than there are people in the United States. Think about that the next time you feel you haven't been productive enough. Some animals have eyes that need to adapt to hot climates, like camels, for example. Their eyes feature a third eyelid, but these sweep across from the corner of each eye. Because their environment is filled with small particles, they need to clean their eyes more frequently than other species. Now, see that little pink thing in the corner of your eye? It's also a third eyelid. Well, a vestige at least. In humans, the third eyelid is unnecessary because it no longer serves its original purpose. Next time you're tuning into your favorite song, try to pay some attention to your heartbeat. If you listen closely, you'll notice that sometimes your heartbeat may synchronize with the rhythm of the song. Now, not all genres of music have this special ability, but some tunes trigger the release of dopamine, or the happy hormone. This effect may give you a lower heart rate, breathing rate, and blood pressure. And speaking of that healthy ticker of yours, just in case you're wondering, it beats on average about 75 times per minute. This means each year, a human heart can pump enough blood to fill an Olympic-sized pool, if that were a thing. What's even more fascinating is that if you were to connect all your blood vessels end to end, it would be able to circle the Earth 2.5 times. But that's not good for your own health, so don't do that. Your heart can also continue to beat even if it's removed from the body. That's because it has its own internal battery, which allows it to beat as long as it receives oxygen. If you regularly have your nails done at a salon, you've probably noticed you need more appointments for your fingers than your toes. That's because fingernails do grow faster. The definitive scientific answer is still up for debate, but many specialists think it's because fingernails used to be claws, somewhere back in our ancient history. These days, they're flatter and have widened a bit, and it all happened when primates started using tools in their day-to-day lives, like stones and branches, so there was less use for claws. Once they got flatter, it meant nails wouldn't have gotten in the way if primates wanted to use the palms of their hands. As for why fingernails grow faster than toenails, the short answer may be the fact that we use our hands more than your feet. As such, our fingernails are more exposed, and we may have evolved to grow them faster. The more you use a certain part of your body, the more it becomes exposed to damage. So for me, I'm in danger of my mouth falling off. Oh boy. Getting back to our hands, it's about time we give a nice shout out to our humble pinkies. We don't see them as being really that important, since we don't use them for holding objects, eating, or writing. But recent studies have shown that losing the pinky on our dominant hands would have a devastating effect. Specialists haven't gathered enough data to supply specific numbers, but from what they've learned so far, losing our pinky would weaken our grip strength considerably, even if it's the lesser used finger. Adding the ring finger to that, and the effect would be worse for our grip strength. Another recent study done in the UK has shown that only about 40% of people are happy with how their nose looks. Regardless of how you feel about it, the human nose is a real-life superhero. That's because it acts as a heater, filter, and humidifier all at once. Inside each nostril, there are small, shelf-like bones that feature blood vessels. They heat the air up before it reaches other parts of our respiratory system. The mucus that's inside there handles making the air more humid. As for the filtering part, that's why we have nose hairs. Small particles get stuck on these small hairs, which helps prevent pollen, spores, viruses, or bacteria from reaching our lungs. Now, when watching cartoons, we're led to believe that the sound our heart makes is because it's touching its environment while beating. Well, it turns out that sound is actually made by the opening and closing of the heart valves. They're like small doors inside our hearts that open and close to pump blood correctly from one side of the heart to the other. For our bodies to work, blood needs to move at the right time and in the right direction, or else. Now let's talk teeth. Throughout your entire life, you'll probably spend up to 40 days total just brushing your teeth. And in case you're still wondering, teeth are not in fact bones, even though they do have a lot in common. One of the primary differences between bones and teeth is that our bones can regenerate. They are living tissue. Our teeth are not, and they remain permanently damaged once broken. Now here's another shocker. We are the only species on this planet to have a chin. There's still some debate about this subject in the scientific community, but one of the reasons why seems to be to make our jaws stronger. As humans have continued to evolve, their teeth and the muscles in their jaws got smaller and smaller, so they needed something to help with increased jaw resistance. Now, most of us have developed some specific traits depending on the area of the globe in which we live. But there is a group of people, specifically those who live in higher altitudes, that develop some pretty cool traits. That's because high-altitude environments come with less oxygen. Not only do these people survive in these locations, but they've adapted so well that they actually thrive. In the Andes Mountains of South America, people have evolved red blood cells that can carry much more oxygen. It makes their overall circulatory system much more efficient. People living in Tibet have to endure similar conditions, but surprisingly, they have adapted differently. In Tibet, they can take more breaths so that they can properly oxygenate their bodies. You've probably heard the myth about dreams only lasting a couple of seconds in reality. Turns out that yes, some of them do, but not all dreams are the same. There are a lot of things we don't understand yet about how we dream. What we do know is that they mainly happen during the rapid eye movement or REM stage of sleep. During this time, your brain is more active, about as active as it is when you're awake. And it's named REM because during the sleep stage, your eyes tend to move a lot. Dreams can happen during the other stages of sleep too, but you're less likely to remember them. As for the length of each dream, they can go from a few seconds to even 20 to 30 minutes. Also, you're more likely to remember a dream if you've woken during the REM stage. Most people have 3 to 5 dreams per night, but some people can have up to 7. I know, seems unlikely, but remember, you immediately forget most of what you dream. Just like we have unique fingerprints, we also develop unique tongue prints. Research has shown that those approximately 10,000 taste buds on our tongues are laid out in a one-of-a-kind pattern. Truth is, about 80% of what you believe is taste is actually smell. That combination of taste and smell that we perceive is what we come to know as flavor. That's probably because our sense of smell is around 10,000 times more sensitive than our sense of taste. Our mouths have also another cool superpower called mouthfeel. With the help of the somatosensory system, it allows us to sense the texture of our food. The system is activated by physical touches, such as pressure, touch, or vibrations. It's even sensitive to pain and temperature. We also use our tongues to identify the size, form, and texture of food, which is crucial for proper chewing and digestion. Hey, tongues are also good for wagging, sticking out at certain people, and trumpet playing.
Your body actually glows. It emits a super faint light that's at its strongest at around 3 to 4 p.m. The sad news is that this glowing is 1,000 times less intense than what your eyes can see. Humans are the only animals that have chins. Even our closest genetic relatives, gorillas and chimps, lack this small piece of bone that extends forward from the jaw. Their lower jaws slant down and back from their front teeth. Scientists still haven't figured out this mystery. The opinions about why people are made this way differ. Some researchers think chins help us chew our food. Others are sure they have something to do with speaking. A few of us think it's simply a special place to grow a goatee. The most abundant element in the human body is oxygen at 65%, but it also contains lithium, cobalt, gold, and uranium. The rarest one of all is radium. On average, humans yawn 20 times a day, partially spontaneously, for example, when you're tired, but sometimes when someone yawns near you. Scientists think it could be a thing called social mirroring. Usually, when animals mimic each other, they recognize some action as useful, so they decide to do it too. With humans, it happens when someone crosses legs, laughs, smiles at you, or your stomach acid breaks down the foods you eat and turns them into easy-to-digest particles. It also stops nasty pathogens and microbes that could make you sick. In fact, your stomach acid is so strong that it can even dissolve bone and metal. Don't start munching down on your soda cans, though. That's probably not going to end well. Your brain has more than 86 billion nerve cells. They're all joined together by 100 trillion connections. That's even more than the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. There's a good chance you can guess someone's name based on how they look. Researchers showed portrait photos to a group of people, with 4 names written below. They were asked to choose the right name for this or that person. The law of chance says you'll guess it 25% of the time, but in this research, people got the names correct at a rate of 25 to 40%, and there were more than 94,000 faces shown. Let's say a man is called Bob. People will expect for him to have a rounder face than Tim. They expect Bob to be more jolly and ready to hang out with people. It has to affect his facial appearance in some way. A woman called Catherine can be considered more serious, studious, and concentrated. That could eventually influence her facial muscles as well. When ancient Romans flexed their biceps, they thought their muscles looked like mice. That's why the word muscle translates as little mouse in Latin. Your left lung is smaller than the right one because it shares space with your heart. Experts used to think that we can only distinguish 10,000 smells. In fact, a recent study found human beings can recognize 1 trillion smells. Millennials, or people born between 1981 and 1996, are more forgetful than older people. The main cause of their forgetfulness comes from higher levels of stress. So come on, dude, chill out, okay? Some scientists think that the purpose of fingerprints is a better grip, but others believe they're there to help wick water off them and allow the skin to stretch when needed to protect it from damage. There's also a theory saying that fingerprints improve the sense of touch. Hot coffee can taste better than cold coffee. Your taste bud receptors are most sensitive when your food is at or a little bit above room temperature. Hot coffee can then seem less bitter because taste buds that detect bitterness are more sensitive when the coffee is cold. The biggest molecule in the human body is the chromosome 1. A human cell has 23 chromosome pairs, and each chromosome 1 is made of 10 billion atoms. You inhale 25 sextillion molecules in just one breath. That's 25 followed by 21 zeros. When you're walking faster, at some point, you'll feel the natural urge to start jogging. Your body wants to have a stable state, whether you're running or walking. So, if you're walking fast, it will unconsciously force you to start running. One theory is, we use more energy when walking faster than running. So that's one of the ways the body saves energy. Your pinky is a powerful little thing. Without it, your hand would lose a significant part of its power. Your index and middle fingers cooperate with your thumb to grab and pinch, and your pinky, together with your ring finger, provides grip strength. The fattiest organ in your body is your brain. Fat makes up at least 60% of its dry weight. This quality got the brain to the Guinness World Records. The organ contains around 25% of your body's cholesterol, which is vital for the brain's well-being. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. Your fingernails grow twice as fast as your toenails. It would take 15.5 months for your toenails to grow 1 inch, but only 7 months for your fingernails to get this long. The outer layer of your skin is thicker on your feet than on other parts of your body. The heart has its own electrical system and can continue beating even when it's disconnected from the body. The vessels in your body are long enough to circle the earth twice or more. The idea that we use only 10% of our brains is a myth. At any given time, you use almost 100%. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to perform simple tasks, like drink a cup of coffee. More than 70% of your brain consists of water, and it needs 20% of your body's oxygen supply. The average lifespan of one eyebrow hair is 4 months. The body of a 110-pound person contains 40 tablespoons of salt. If you ironed out all the wrinkles in your brain and laid it flat, it would be the size of a pillowcase. The brain wrinkles as there's not a lot of room in the skull, so it folds over itself as it grows. By the way, don't do that pillowcase thing with your brain. Trust me on this one. We spend 40% of our life with our eyes closed. Most of that time is when we're asleep. But don't forget to count blinking too, or while driving. You produce around 85,000 pints of spit in your lifetime. That's enough saliva to fill around 500 bathtubs. Enough said. The highest blood flow isn't actually in your heart, and it's not in your brain either. It's in your kidneys. It's super hard for us to grasp just how small an atom is. But think of it this way. Your body is made up of a staggering 7 octillion atoms. Yeah, doesn't that look like a 7 being chased by a whole mob of zeros? For adults, the blood makes up 7 to 8% of the total body weight. About 55% of your blood is liquid plasma. The rest is red and white blood cells and platelets. They form clots and prevent bleeding. You can't swallow and breathe at the same time. The food you swallow and the air you breathe go down the same part of your throat at first. Only a bit deeper does the passage split into the esophagus for food and liquid and the trachea for air. When you swallow, your airway gets automatically closed off. This prevents you from accidentally inhaling food, but occasionally it still happens. There's a name for the growling sound that your stomach makes when you're hungry. It's called borborygmi. It takes 6 to 8 hours for food to travel through your stomach and small intestine. That's because your body is trying to absorb all its nutrients. The idea that the tongue has flavor zones is a myth. All taste buds can detect 5 tastes, but some receptors are more responsive than others. Human beings are the only animals that willingly delay sleep. Just make sure you get enough. Most people are sure that humans only have 5 senses, but that's not entirely true. Taste, touch, smell, sight, and hearing aren't the only ones we have. Scientists claim that people have between 9 and 20 senses in total. These include thermoception, the sense of warmth, equilibrioception, the sense of balance. There's also the sense of time, although not everyone seems to have that last one. We used to think that there were just 8 different blood types, but in reality, there are over 30 known blood group systems. Here on the bright side, our favorite blood group is B positive. Get it? For every pound of fat you gain, you generate 1 mile of new blood vessels to supply oxygen and nutrients to your body. Your stomach produces a new lining every 6 days to avoid digesting itself. Nerve cells transmit 1,000 nerve impulses a second. They travel between 1 and 268 miles per hour. Our DNA contains 100,000 viruses. Scientists have discovered one that goes back 100 million years. Your body emits visible light. You're the brightest at 4 p.m., and your glow is the least visible at 10 a.m. Unfortunately, this glowing is 1,000 times less intense than what your eyes can see. Sweat is mostly water mixed with proteins, sugars, ammonia, and a lot of other stuff. It even contains tiny amounts of trace metals like copper, zinc, nickel, iron, and so on. What makes sweat taste salty is the sodium it contains. Plus, the more salt you eat, the saltier your sweat is. Your body's trying to get rid of the excess, and the fastest way is to sweat it out. If you walked 2 miles per hour, you'd have to walk for 20 hours straight to lose 1 pound. And it would take you 518 days and 8 hours to circle the equator. Earwax isn't actually wax. It contains fat, skin cells, sweat, and dirt. Your brain gets 3 times bigger over the first year of life and reaches its full maturity when you're 25. 60% of it is fat. Your brain generates around 23 watts of electrical power, which is enough to run a small light bulb. Humans can't really multitask. Your brain can't perform more than 1 action at the same time. It switches between them, which doesn't save time as you might think, but increases the possibility you'll do something wrong and makes the process longer. When you have an exam to take, or you're at work trying to focus on an important task, try chewing gum. Research showed it can help you stay concentrated for longer on tasks that require your full attention. Studies even say that it's a better test aid than caffeine. There's nothing special in the gum, but the act of chewing wakes your brain up. The effect doesn't last long though, just for 20 minutes. Embryos develop fingerprints at 3 months. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. Sunburn is the result of radiation exposure. When your body's natural defense mechanism gets overwhelmed trying to fight UV rays, a toxic reaction occurs that results in sunburn. Goosebumps are an evolutionary reflex left over from our ancestors. The release of adrenaline made their hair stand up, and they look scarier to approaching predators. Your body produces 1 to 3 pints of saliva every day. It helps you digest food and fights off infections. You also have a lot of bacteria in your mouth. Yeah, that's right. The average amount of bacteria in a person's mouth is almost the same as the number of people living on Earth. That's hard to digest. Each human has roughly 150,000 hairs on their head. Every strand grows around 1/2 inch per month. If we added the growth from each hair, it would measure the distance of 10 miles in just 1 year. Your hair is also a lot stronger than you think. A single strand can hold 3 ounces, which is the weight of an apple. If we combined the strength of all the hair on your head, it could support the weight of 2 elephants. Hey, let's try it. The beating sound your heart makes is the clap of valve leaflets opening and closing. Your heart doesn't replicate its cells unless you have an injury. Your corneas are the only part of your body that don't get blood. They get oxygen directly through the air. When you're sitting or standing upright, it's easier for you to recall some positive memories that make you feel good. Some believe it's because sitting up with your back flat boosts blood flow, and your brain gets more oxygen, which helps it function better. The man who has the deepest voice in the world, and that's definitely not me, can produce sounds that humans, including him, can't hear at all. But elephants can hear those sounds. Veins look blue because light has to go through layers of skin and fat to reach them. Your skin scatters a lot of the red portion of white light before it reflects the blood. This leaves only the blue light to bounce back to your eyes. A person who has anosmia is unable to detect smells. Phantosmia is the opposite condition, when someone smells an odor that isn't actually there. The human brain has 100 billion neurons. It's 73% water, and the same is true about the heart. That's why if your brain loses even 2% of its liquid, you start to feel tired. It also makes your memory worse, shortens your attention span, and puts a dampener on your mood. The earliest known person to have had blue eyes lived in the Stone Age, 7,000 years ago. Your right kidney is probably smaller and sits lower down than your left kidney to make room for your liver. By the way, your brain makes sure you don't drink too little or too much water. After you swallow some liquid, your mouth and throat start to fire signals to your brain, telling it to stop drinking. Otherwise, you'd keep gulping down water for the entire 10 to 60 minutes it takes the liquid to get to your cells. Your eyes can see something for a mere 13 milliseconds, and your brain will already process this image. The average blink lasts from 100 to 400 milliseconds. Even though the tongue isn't the strongest muscle in your body, it never gets tired. That's because of the way it's built. It's made up of 8 interwoven muscles. The tongue is the only muscle with ends not connected to bone. Other muscles join 2 bones at both ends because that's how we pull and make a motion. There are around 700 different species of bacteria in your mouth. Over 6 billion of them live there. Your skin is your largest organ. It can cover the surface area of 2 bath towels. It accounts for around 16% of body weight and is around 22 square feet. If you typed 60 words per minute for 8 hours a day, it would take you 50 years to type the human genome. You get tired pretty quickly when you're out in the heat. This happens because your body is trying really hard to keep itself cool, which puts a lot of extra work on it. So you get exhausted and tired, even if you don't do anything physically demanding. Your body has 78 organs, but only 5 of them are essential for survival: the brain, liver, kidney, lungs, and heart. Oh, the phone's ringing. Must be something urgent. At 11 p.m. Only all the gadgets in the house are silent. It's your ears that are ringing. You can also hear some hissing, whistling, buzzing, and even roaring. But all this noise doesn't have an external source. That's why it's known as phantom sounds. They can occur in one or both ears, constantly or from time to time. They're usually most noticeable at night, when nothing distracts you. Women have more taste buds on the surface of their tongues than men do. That's one of the reasons why 35% of ladies and only 15% of guys are super tasters. Those are people who feel flavors more strongly than others. Left-handed people usually prefer to chew on the left side. And right-handed people, well, you guessed it, chew on the right. Even if your fingerprints are damaged, they'll grow back in the same unique pattern. When breathing, a single lung only uses 5% of the oxygen you've inhaled.
You can't recall a memory all by itself. When you're trying to think of one detail, like the color of the t-shirt your friend was wearing the other week, you'll remember some other details too. For example, the place where you saw him, things you were talking about. The hippocampus is the part of your brain that stores memories. It usually packs them together, including multiple small details. On average, taste buds last 10 days, clusters of sensory cells in your tongue. The buds that are closer to the surface are more short-lived. That's the reason you don't have to wait for too long to be able to taste again after burning your tongue. One theory says déjà vu is some sort of a brain processing lag. Scientists think it might happen when your brain is transferring information from one side to the other, and there's a split-second delay in that process. That means that your brain gets the same information twice and processes it as the event that happened before. Only 30% of people can flare their nostrils, and 1/3 can bend their thumb backward. Some people can produce a roaring noise in their heads. All they have to do is tense their ears or jaws. There's a small muscle in the ear. It dampens loud sounds, like when you're chewing. But some people can flex that muscle, and that creates an audible rumble. Your fingertips are sensitive, but hundreds of times less so than your lips. You inhale lots of different types of debris, including 700,000 of your own skin flakes, and that's only in a day. A hypnic jerk is a twitch you can experience when falling asleep. It's an abrupt muscle movement that comes during the non-REM sleep phase. It can create an illusion of falling. One of the theories is that, when you're dozing off, your brain sees the relaxing of your muscles as a sign you're in trouble and really falling. So it sends signals to the muscles to protect you by tensing up. Synesthesia is a special and rare ability where people can taste music or hear colors. Only 1 in every 2,000 people has it. For some people, cilantro may taste similar to soap because the plant contains a chemical used in soap making. But only 4 to 14% of the world's population have special genes that can detect it. 18% of people can move both ears at the same time, while 22% can move one ear at once. People who do it use weak vestigial muscles we got from the ancestor humans, who had this in common with cats. Bruises change their color over time. A bruise appears because there's bleeding under the skin. Tiny blood vessels get crushed, and some blood gets trapped in there. In the beginning, a bruise is red because the blood is rich in oxygen. But then, it turns purple, green, yellow, or even gray when the levels of oxygen drop. Sweat doesn't smell itself. The unpleasant odor is caused by bacteria on your skin. When sweat comes out of the pores on your body, the bacteria breaks it down into acids. What most deodorants actually do is get rid of the bacteria on your skin. People used to dream in black and white much more than today. That's because they watched black and white TV. Blue cheese is another thing that affects your dreams and makes them more vivid. Eggshells might be used for growing new human bones. Chicken eggshells contain calcium carbonate, which is something you also have in your bones. The food on the plane is likely to taste different than on the ground. That's because you lose up to 30% of your taste bud sensitivity due to the dryness and pressure in the cabin. It's especially true about salty and sweet foods. Your nostrils don't work with the same efficiency all the time. When you breathe, one nostril does most of the work, and they switch every couple of hours. You wouldn't be able to taste food without saliva. Your taste buds have chemoreceptors that recognize different flavors, but they need some liquid for those flavors to bind into their molecules. Also, you can't taste things saliva doesn't dissolve. The brain can't actually feel pain. It does have a pain center, but it doesn't have pain receptors itself. When your head hurts, you can feel it because of the nerves, tissues, and blood vessels around your brain. A single human hair can support 3.5 ounces of weight. That's how much 2 candy bars weigh. Toenails grow almost 4 times more slowly than fingernails that get more exposure and are used more frequently. There must be at least some photos where you have red eyes. When the camera's flash goes off, your eyes aren't prepared for such an influx of light. Your pupils remain dilated, which is why the light gets reflected off the red blood vessels of the choroid. This is a layer of tissue at the back of your eye that nourishes your retina. The right lung is bigger than the left one because your body needs to make some room for the heart. Your teeth are the only part of your body that can heal itself. The masseter is the strongest muscle you have, based on its weight. Together with the rest of the raw muscles, it can close your teeth with a force of 200 pounds on the molars and 55 pounds on the incisors. Onions produce a special chemical irritant. It stimulates special glands in your eyes, causing them to release tears. Your nose can memorize up to 50,000 different scents and detect more than 1 trillion of odors. We all have our unique smell, except for identical twins. This smell is partly determined by genetics, but it also depends on your diet, hygiene, and the environment. Eating snow is not the best way to stay hydrated. Your body needs too much energy to turn it into water. Snow can provide a bit of hydration, but it'll also lower the temperature of your body, which isn't the best scenario if you're trying to survive harsh winter conditions. You burn somewhere between 100 and 200 calories per hour while standing. Sitting burns 60 to 130 calories, depending on your height, weight, gender, and age. Brain freeze is an annoying ice cream headache. That's how your brain tells you to slow down and maybe stop eating something that's so cold. The main purpose of eyelashes is to shield your eyes and protect them from sand, moisture, dust, and debris in the air. Your eyelashes sense when something comes up too close to your eyes, like an insect flying toward you, and trigger your blink reflex. Blinking also helps when you need to flush out some tiny particles or debris stuck in your puncta. Those are small openings you have in your eyelids. That's where the tears get pumped out. Your eyebrows stop sweat from running directly into your eyes. Your skin there and the shape of your bones also work together to direct the sweat toward the sides of your face. We're not the fastest, strongest, or biggest in the animal kingdom, but we're the best at long-distance running. That's because we have long legs, and our bodies can lose excess heat through sweating. Even long ago, our ancestors hunted animals by chasing them for long periods of time. Eventually, it wore smaller creatures out. 5 basic senses are taste, touch, sight, sound, and smell. But people have more senses than that. Proprioception is when your body is aware of its parts and their position, even if you don't see them. Like if your arm is behind your back, you know it's there. If you were an octopus, you wouldn't know it, because these creatures don't know their arms exist if they can't see them. Thermoception is your ability to sense temperature. Equilibrioception is a sense of balance. You also have nociception, which means you can feel pain. Then there's chronoception. That's how you can sense time passing by. There are even more senses found in the animal kingdom: electroreception and magnetoreception, but people don't have those. You can't see your taste buds. Those little bumps on the tongue are lingual papillae. There are 4 kinds of them: circumvallate, foliate, fungiform, filiform. They are all covered with taste buds, except for the last one, filiform. This one is responsible for the sense of touch in your tongue. Your pinky holds 50% of the total strength in your hand. Your liver is a very important organ that works a lot and is responsible for 500 individual functions. Up to 10% of it is made of fat. The liver can regenerate. You can burn calories when you take a hot bath, as many as you would if you took a half-hour walk. People mostly need 7 minutes to fall asleep. This time gets shorter if you just had a large, tasty meal. On average, the heart is as big as your fist. It beats 115,000 times and pumps around 2,000 gallons of blood a day.
Take a look at your fingernails. Are they a bit ridged? There are a bunch of reasons why that might happen, and it has nothing to do with your manicure skills. To start with, know that your fingernails might be a good indicator of any health problems, but those vertical ridges are normal, especially when you get older. It's your skin's way of showing it needs to slow down. New skin cells don't get produced as rapidly as they used to, so you get this texture on your fingernails. However, if this is just one of many other weird symptoms, it might be more than just a sign of aging. For instance, it may be a sign of a chemical imbalance, which can give you vertical ridges, but also make your nails look spoon-shaped. Don't put stuff in your ear. You know that. Even with Q-tips, you should always be gentle when using it. Otherwise, you could end up causing more harm. What's even more interesting is that sticking things in your ear can trigger a weird coughing mechanism, also known as the Arnold's ear cough reflex. Turns out that the ear has a say in coughing because of the vagus nerve, this long nerve road from the brain to the belly. It taps the ear, handles the voice box, and takes a detour to the stomach. This nerve runs all sorts of daily activities without us being able to control it, from speaking to eating, and even bathroom breaks. Now, the part that connects it with the ear is Arnold's nerve. This one deals with touch sensations. Stick something in your ear and it can get triggered. And it's precisely that tickle sensation that can make you cough. Think of it as a brain blip, tricking your body into believing it's got something in the throat. You end up coughing as a way to kick out the imaginary intruder. You might be missing a muscle in your arm too, but it's okay. You are most likely born that way, and you're also one of many. It's called the palmaris longus tendon, and about 14% of the population doesn't have it. Here's how you can test it out. Gently flex your wrist and touch your pinky with your thumb. If you can see a little tendon protruding on the inside of your wrist, you've got it. If you don't, that's fine. For the most part, this muscle doesn't increase the performance of our arm. Here's another little experiment you can safely try at home. Check which one of your nostrils is your favorite, even though you probably didn't even know you had one. Stand in front of a mirror, breathe out through your nose, and watch how the fog forms. Sure, there will be 2 marks on the mirror, but for most people, one's gonna be bigger. That's because we usually breathe more from one nostril at a time. Some doctors say that about 75% of our breath comes from one single nostril. It also switches sides during the day, in a process called the nasal cycle. So why not both nostrils at once? Well, it's generally believed to be all about moisture, preventing one side from getting too dry. The only time you might be able to notice the difference is when you're trying to fall asleep. Lie on your right side, and you'll see that gravity makes one part of your nose work harder. Speaking of sleep, whenever you're trying to get some rest at a new place, only a part of your brain will actually get some quality sleep. That's because our brains are wired to remain a bit more alert when we're in an unfamiliar place. This discovery explains why we often wake up feeling groggy after a night in a new apartment. This is a feature we share with birds and sea creatures who can half sleep, keeping an eye out. Back in the day, sleep researchers noticed this and named it the first night effect. Whenever someone participated in a sleep study, they noticed the quality of their rest was so bad they had to trash the data. But after the first night, it seemed to level up. We do this because back in ancient times, the chances of getting attacked by predators during the night were way higher. So it made sense to keep that part of the brain on guard for any dangers. Unfortunately, there's no switch to flip this off. So after a night in a new place, just know you'll need way more coffee. And maybe hit that subscribe button to stay updated with our newest videos for a nice pick-me-up in those snoozy days. It's possible that each time you're getting ready for a workout, your heart is already acting up, even though you aren't technically moving your muscles yet. That's because of an effect called anticipatory rise. In simple terms, it's like your brain is sending directions to your heart, telling it to get ready. These directions come in the form of chemicals, like noradrenaline and adrenaline. It's helpful because that kick in heart rate means more blood pumping out every minute, which is good for your muscles. The increased blood flow delivers oxygen and prepares your muscles to put in the required effort. The better shape your heart's in, the smoother this whole process goes. All of us have heard stories about regular people being able to lift heavy objects in stressful situations. You know, like a mom being able to lift a car to save her kid. Some are calling it hysterical strength. And it can't really be tested out in a lab because you can't just fake a sense of imminent danger. It's more about real, spontaneous moments that somehow trigger this hidden superpower. Well, even though it sounds like people are lifting a ton of weight, they're not that strong. Take the classic car lift scenario. You'd think they're lifting the whole car, but it's more like lifting a part of it. Most wheels are still on the ground. Plus, cars aren't evenly heavy everywhere. The engine's the densest part, not the area that's often being lifted. As for the hysterical strength, it's more about realizing we're stronger than we think. Our muscles usually use the least effort needed for everyday tasks. But when we need to go all out, we can recruit more muscle power. You see, our bodies are very efficient. Why use all our muscles when lifting a coffee cup? Even when we feel exhausted, chances are we're not. Researchers say we might only use 60 to 80% of our muscle strength, and that's reserved for top athletes. Apart from efficiency, our brains also don't go full power on our muscles because of a built-in safety mechanism. If we used all our strength, we could easily hurt ourselves. The simple game of peekaboo isn't just a fun pastime for babies. They love it so much because it can help with their development. You see, it's not just about covering and uncovering faces. It helps them better master the skill of visual tracking. It's also useful for understanding the concept of object permanence. Just because they can't see something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's gone forever. This knowledge that objects exist even if they're out of sight will increase their problem-solving skills when they get older. Playing peekaboo is also a good way to exercise various positive emotions. They go from surprise to anticipation to excitement and happiness. Some say they can do just fine with just 4 hours of sleep every night. But scientists say most of us adults need a good 6 to 8 hours. And the reality is that anything less than this average can lead to serious sleep deprivation. That is, of course, if you're not one of those super sleepers. These people are magical beings who thrive on less than 6 hours of sleep each night. They function properly on that little, but they also naturally wake up after just 4 or 5 hours. Only 1 to 3% of the population can claim that title. Also, no, it's genetic. You can't train yourself to be one.
You're a scientist who spent the last few years studying brain abilities and building a machine that can upload any data into a human mind. Want to become a lawyer? Upload all the law knowledge into your brain. Need to learn a new language? Just put on a special headset that connects to your mind and downloads all the necessary information through the computer. Usually, you lose consciousness for a couple of minutes while the information is being uploaded. Then you might feel tired for several hours, since your brain needs some time to adapt to new data. But now you've decided to download much more than one profession. You want to upload an electronic library with millions of books to become the smartest person in the world. You put on a headset, start the program, but forget one simple important thing. Uh-oh. The brain must process any information before you start actually using it. While sleeping, the human brain analyzes and processes all the information received during the day. Well, you start the machine and fall into an endless black abyss. You're climbing an incredibly high mountain. You don't remember how you got here or how long you've been doing this. All you know is that you have to get to the top. You pass through the clouds, the blue sky is replaced with black space. The top is higher than the ISS. You look at the mountain and see that it's not just a rock, but books. You climb an infinitely huge stack of books. Chemical formulas, fish, huge octopuses, tables with mathematical formulas flying around. You stop gripping, but don't fall. You float in space and fly to the top. Ooh, there's a shining light. You're getting closer and closer. Something happens and you fall down at a great speed. Someone is pulling you to the ground. You come back to consciousness, slightly annoyed because such a beautiful dream ended. You wake up, but don't see or remember anything. In the dark, there are flashes of light, and you realize that your eyes are closed. You make an incredible effort and finally open them. You don't know where you are, and your brain is slowly uploading information about your surroundings. You want to get out of bed and understand what's happening, but can't. Your muscles just won't flex. You can't turn your neck. Every movement is hard and your mouth is dry. The eyes are closing since the eyelids are hard to keep open. You want to call for help, but you can't scream. Your vocal cords are too weak, and your jaw muscles don't allow you to open your mouth wide. Your friend comes into the room and tells you not to worry. She says you've been asleep for a month, and that's what's been happening with your brain and body all this time. Our dream consists of two parts: not rapid eye movement, NREM, and rapid eye movement, REM. NREM sleep is the deepest sleep stage and consists of several parts. It's called so because our eyes don't move during this time. The brain's activity decreases and the mind rests. They say during NREM sleep, our subconscious mind turns on. It analyzes all the experiences you've had during the day. Then, the brain begins to slowly come out of the deep stage to the REM phase. Your eyes move quickly behind your eyelids, and you can see vivid dreams. The last two phases last about an hour and a half to 2 hours and change each other several times in one night. The NREM phase lasts most of this time, and the REM lasts 15 to 30 minutes. If your body gets enough sleep, you wake up right after the REM phase. If you need more rest, then you return to the deep phase after the REM phase. On average, a person goes through 3 to 4 phases per night. You've had more than 350 of these stages over the last month. The REM phase is important because it receives all the information from the subconscious and processes it. As a result, we see dreams. You may think the whole dream is meaningless, but it's connected with events and sensations we've experienced over the day. When you uploaded the library with 1 million books into your mind, it took much longer to process such an amount of information than a usual 8-hour sleep. You remember only a small part of your dream, and your consciousness doesn't feel that a whole month has passed. The whole processing of the downloaded knowledge was hidden from you by the subconscious mind, but you saw a little part. You dreamed you were climbing a peak that symbolized knowledge. This was your last REM phase in this dream. That's why you remember it so well. The level of your erudition is incredible now. But what's the point if you're completely helpless right now? Your physical body has been through an ordeal this month. During the first few days of sleep, your body doesn't change much. Your brain, knowing that you're asleep, produces a special hormone that causes the body not to produce, well, you don't want to go to the toilet. Also, during sleep, your body cools down slightly and your muscles relax completely. Without physical exertion, muscle fibers become weaker and smaller. You lose 1 to 5% of your muscle mass every day. Blood circulation is disrupted, muscles don't receive nutrition and weaken so much that they completely turn off. After a month, they become like a thin layer of jelly. This applies not only to your arms and legs, your face can't express emotions and you can't open your eyes. A couple of days after falling asleep, the body begins to experience severe dehydration. After a week, a large percentage of the fluid in your body disappears. Moisture is extracted from skin tissues, fat, and muscles to maintain the overall health. To conserve moisture and the body's energy, your body cools down. After a couple of weeks, you're not much warmer than a can of soda from the fridge. A month later, you're more like a large chunk of ice. Every day, fewer and fewer vitamins and nutrients are distributed throughout your body. Imagine the bloodstream is a broad highway with thousands of cars, where each car is some element necessary for the organism's functioning. Every day, the number of cars decreases, their speed getting slower. After a month, the road is almost empty. The metabolism is stopped. All your organs except your heart and lungs almost stop working because there's no need to. The kidneys don't filter the incoming moisture. The liver doesn't control the metabolism because no substances enter the body anymore. The lack of vitamins and nutrients makes your bones as brittle as glass. The brain also lacks nutrition. It continues to gain new knowledge, but its reaction speed and analytical abilities decrease. Almost all the remaining resources are directed to provide the brain with energy, but this is still not enough. After waking up, you may not understand for a long time where you are, who you are, and what's happening. The TV is turned on in front of you, and it will take you several seconds to realize it. Your heart rate is reduced several times. The heart isn't working at full strength. You breathe so slowly and so weakly that even a fly flying past your nose can hardly feel the breath. Your body now is like a laptop with a low battery level. The energy is only enough to show the image the computer needs charging. You would be both the smartest and most helpless person in the world. Fortunately, this didn't happen to you, because all this time you were helped by your friend. She fed you through a tube, gave you a complex of vitamins. Your body was covered with a blanket that creates electrical impulses, not too powerful to hurt you, but capable of making your muscles contract. You were in good shape while sleeping. Of course, this is not enough to wake up and feel as good as new. In the first few minutes, it's still difficult for you to move, but after an hour, you get out of bed. In the next few weeks, you restore your nutrition, exercise to tone your muscles, meditate, and do intellectual tasks to relieve your brain stress and restore your nervous system. New knowledge doesn't come immediately. It comes in waves every day. Today, you know all the works of avant-garde writers, and tomorrow, you understand the latest achievements in the field of neural surgery. With this knowledge, you decide to start studying sleep. You like the dream of climbing the mountain so much that you're about to create a device that can record your dreams. Your plan is to create a simple algorithm so that these dreams can be played on a computer screen once you wake up.
The cornea is the only part of your body with living cells that doesn't have blood vessels. It gets nutrients and oxygen directly from the tear fluid on the outside and the thick watery substance you have between the cornea on the inside, and also from the nerve fibers connected to the cornea. That's why contact lenses used to be a potential issue. The older ones were reducing oxygen supply, since the cornea mostly gets oxygen from the outside. This problem was solved, or at least reduced, when silicone hydrogel lenses came to the market. Some other parts of your body with no blood vessels are your nails, hair, outer skin layers, and tooth enamel. Did you notice your sweat sometimes smells of onions after your workout? You have nothing to worry about. There are two types of sweat glands in your skin. The first kind of glands are located on certain areas of your body, like the groin region and the armpits. They produce a specific oily fluid, which is a response to certain emotional experiences. Another type of sweat gland is way more common. They're distributed all over your body and are responsible for the specific sweat you get after the workout. The sweat cools your body down as it evaporates from your skin. It's 99% water, so it's practically odorless. Well, at least when it first leaves the pores and comes to the surface of your skin. But there are many types of bacteria on the human skin, and they feed on the nutrients in that sweat, together with skin flakes. One of the byproducts of this is specific chemicals, and their smell can sometimes strongly remind you of onion. You may have noticed you produce more saliva when you go for a run, especially if it's a short jog in cold weather. But if you're running a marathon and it's a nice warm day outside, you'll produce less saliva. It's your body trying to offset the drying effect, since you breathe through your mouth way more. But your body becomes more dehydrated over longer periods, which is why it's trying to conserve water by reducing saliva production. Every training you do, no matter how intensive it is, also makes you secrete more of a specific type of protein. It makes the saliva more viscous and sticky, which is why you may feel like your mouth is dry way more after your workout. Humans see the world 15 seconds out of date, which means your brain constantly keeps you a little bit in the past. This way, it helps you stabilize your vision of the world around you. Your eyes receive a huge amount of visual information. Yep, literally millions of colors, shapes, and ever-changing motion wherever you turn. It's not an easy task for your brain to process all that. The visual world alters all the time because of changes in viewpoint, light, and the rest of the outer factors. Your visual input changes because you need to blink. Plus, your head, eyes, and your entire body are always in some sort of motion. Your brain has to establish a mechanism that can create illusory stability. It automatically smooths your visual input. It doesn't analyze every little visual snapshot, It's like a time machine. You actually perceive an average of things you saw in the past 15 seconds at any given moment. The brain pulls together objects so they appear more similar to each other. That's why it tricks you into believing you're in stable surroundings. If your brain kept you updated in real time, the world would feel like a very, very chaotic place with constant changes in movement, light, and shadow, which would probably feel like you were hallucinating all the time. Your bones are really strong, but your teeth, which we also consider as part of the skeletal system, are even stronger. That's because of the enamel, the hard outer layer of your tooth. The enamel keeps the tissue and the delicate nerves inside your teeth safe. You're basically burning calories while you're thinking. When you rest and don't engage in any particular activity except for the basics, which includes digesting, breathing, and keeping yourself warm, it's the stage where your brain uses up to 20 to 25% of the total energy of your body. That means your body will burn around 350 to 450 calories per day, while pretty much doing nothing. We're not the only ones in the animal kingdom with such a mechanism. Some small mammals, like the minuscule pygmy marmoset and the tiny tree shrew, devote the same percentage of their total body energy to their brain. Most of the energy the brain burns is to help its cells, the neurons, to communicate with each other. They do it via chemical signals the brain transmits across synapses, those special cell structures. So, the brain directs a lot of energy towards synapses in order to make them work. Your brain never really rests. Even when you're sleeping, certain parts are active. So, your brain needs its fuel to work, and you're basically burning calories in your sleep. The more demanding mental tasks you take throughout the day, the more calories you burn. So, if you skip today's workout, solve some Sudoku. Do you like to rush with your ice cream? Sometimes it pays off, but if you do it often, you must know the feeling of brain freeze pretty well. It's a pretty intense and uncomfortable feeling that comes from the front or sides of your head right after you drink or eat something cold, such as a slushy drink, ice cream, or an ice pop. Some people even go through a similar sensation whenever they're exposed to cold air. Scientists are still not sure exactly why this happens, but one of the theories is the cold substance stimulates a cluster of nerves located at the back of the palate. Another theory says the blood vessels in the roof of the mouth and sinuses quickly constrict because the temperature in your mouth drops before they dilate again. Brain freeze is not something dangerous that you should be seriously worried about. And no, hanging over the table, groaning, or clasping your head in your hands won't help much. Some people like to sleep a lot. Hey, guilty as charged. But some have a certain condition called familiar natural short sleepers, which means they're kind of immune to sleep deprivation. About 1% of our population has it. They can fall short on sleep and feel pretty good about it. They're fine with sleeping for 6 hours per night. This amount would wreck the majority of people after a couple of nights. The human eye normally has 3 cones. That means we can recognize approximately 1 million different shades in the green, red, and blue spectrums of colors. But there are some people with a rare condition, so-called tetrachromats, that have 4 cones in their eyes. This allows them to see ultraviolet shades, which means they can distinguish 100 million distinct colors. Did you know your skeleton is all wet? I mean, your entire body mostly consists of water, up to 60%. That fluid is not only in your organs, muscles, and skin, it's in your skeleton too. Your bone mass is almost 1/3 water. There's this amazing hidden network a human body holds inside. Blood vessels are really small, but if you could line them all up, you'd get something huge. Your entire body boasts a network of 60,000 miles of blood vessels. One of the ways to keep your network healthy is by eating right. Have you ever wondered why our distant relatives, the primates, are so much stronger than us? In many ways, our bodies are very similar. Look at the chimp's muscle structure, for example. But our closest primate relatives are approximately 1.35 times stronger than us. the human body developed more slow-twitch muscle fibers compared to the rest of the primates. This type of muscle fiber is a less powerful one, but it lets us endure more than other primates and do things like foraging and hunting, activities that helped our distant ancestors to survive. That's also the reason why we can run a marathon. A monkey could never do it. But we'd still lose in a strength competition. Laughter is contagious. It's not just a metaphor. Researchers have found that strong emotions can make the brain activity of different people sync. Laughter is something science usually links with social creatures. People are almost 30 times more likely to laugh when in some social situations, hanging out with their friends or people they feel relaxed with. One of the theories says that you're probably going to join when you see your friend laughing because humans are empathetic beings. Your brain will release endorphins when you're laughing. These are special chemicals that make you feel safe and at ease. So we're not sure why exactly our laughter is contagious, but it feels really good, so... Join us on the bright side of life and laugh away.
So, when someone is lying, their nose gives it away. And no, it does not grow longer. You haven't seen mine. It turns out that when a person lies, the temperature around their nose, as well as the inner corners of their eyes, rises. So, imagine you're on a first date, and the person tells you something hard to believe. You whip out your thermometer and take the temperature of their nose. Then they take your temperature, and back and forth it goes all night long. Actually, there are better things to do, but I'm not going to spoil it for you. Women's hearts beat faster than men's. The average male's heart rate is between 70 and 72 beats per minute. At the same time, the average for women is between 78 and 82 beats. This is because women's hearts are generally smaller than men's. The female heart pumps less blood with each beat, so it needs to work a little harder to keep up with the male's. Your lungs are one of the largest organs in your body. Their total surface area is almost the same as a tennis court. And the total length of the airways running through them is similar to the distance from Chicago to Las Vegas. And all this manages to fit inside your body. Now, nerve impulses your brain sends travels at a speed of around 170 miles per hour. That's as fast as a high-speed train. The amount of food consumed by the average human in their lifetime weighs as much as 8 Asian elephants. It's unsurprising that we spend around 4 years of our life eating. Ooh, tongue twister. 8 Asian elephants, 8 Asian elephants. Now, we shed our skin as it's actually food for fungi, bacteria, and other stuff we definitely want to stay away from. We get rid of around 600,000 particles of skin every hour. That's why they call me Dusty. Your eyes get their color from a pigment called melanin. Brown-eyed people have more melanin than those with green eyes. The blood in your body travels 4 miles per hour, and it reaches your brain in just a few seconds. Some people can hear the sounds of their eyeballs moving. Ooh. It's a rare condition called canal dehiscence syndrome. It causes every single sound inside the body to be amplified. One man described it as hearing his eyes scratching like sandpaper every time they moved in their sockets. Wow. Then I guess watching a tennis match must get really loud. When you see a person smiling at you, you know how it feels, which can make you do the same. The same is with yawning. It's also some sort of unconscious way our brain makes social bonds with others that are yawning. Wisdom teeth used to have an important role. They were the third set of molars we used to mash meat and other firm food in our mouths. When our brains got bigger and we started eating softer food, jawbone structure changed, which means we didn't need wisdom teeth anymore. And that's why we've dumbed down. Nah, that's not why. When you're awake, your brain produces electricity. The actual amount is between 15 to 25 watts. That's enough to power an LED light. The electricity comes from the brain delivering millions of messages around the body every single second. These messages are how your brain tells your arms to move, for example. Think of your body as a super speedy highway for electrical signals. Your teeth are the only part of your body that can't repair itself. That's why dentists were created. But the enamel they're covered with is one of the toughest things in the human body. Now, scientists have noticed that people with bigger pupils are better at problem solving. Bigger pupilled individuals, yes, that is a legit word, can also focus better and ignore distractions, huh? Even their memory is sharper. We don't know the reasons for the phenomenon yet, but many people think it's because the pupil is linked to a spot in the brain that initiates your mental abilities. What? Humans can use echolocation just like whales or bats. Some blind people can get information about their surroundings in some sort of flashes in 3D perspective and have a strong sense of texture and density. They get information with sound waves. Our brains process those differently than light waves. Echolocation uses certain brain parts sighted people use for vision. Your skeletal cells never stop regenerating. That's why you get a new skeleton every 10 years or so. This process slows down with age, and the regeneration takes longer. That's one of the main reasons why bones become thinner. You must have heard of snakes shedding their skin. But humans do it too. Your skin's outer layer sheds every 2 to 4 weeks. That adds up to roughly 2 pounds of skin every year. That's the same weight as that of a pineapple. Ew. The enamel of our teeth is the hardest substance in the human body. 96% of it consists of minerals. Now, you'd have to stand for way more than 2 hours to burn the same amount of energy as you do in just 30 minutes of walking. The cornea of your eye is the only part of your body with no blood flow at all. It only gets oxygen. Your tongue is the only muscle with ends not connected to bone. Other muscles join 2 bones at both ends because that's how we pull and make a motion. The tongue is connected to the hyoid bone on one end, which is part of the neck, but there's nothing on the other side. Your sense of smell is the only one that goes directly to the part of the brain that controls your emotions and memories. Did I mention your pancreas? Your pancreas contains taste receptor cells that allow it to detect not only sugar but artificial sweeteners too. It uses the taste data to balance out hormones. Somebody actually counted this, and you swallow 600 times a day, once every minute when you're awake, and around 3 times per hour while sleeping. The average person has 10,000 taste buds. But as they get older, some taste buds are not replaced. An older person may have just 5,000 working buds, so they have to work harder or something. Eventually, human body hair may disappear. It used to protect us from severe weather conditions, but now we have clothes and umbrellas to do that. Most hair on the human body no longer serves any function. That's excluding our eyebrows and eyelashes, which protect our eyes from sweat and other nasty things dripping in. By the way, we're already halfway to losing all our hair. Humans used to be completely covered in it, which made us look as furry as gorillas. You have 5 million hair follicles on your body, and only 100,000 of them on your head. Hair grows half an inch every month, so a 70-year-old person that never got a haircut would have hair as long as a telephone pole. There's a newly discovered type of brain cells crucial for visual search. They're called target cells. Without their help, you wouldn't be able to spot an acquaintance in a crowd or your dog in the park. Interestingly, target cells don't care what the thing you're searching for looks like. All they want to know is whether an object is your target or not. You have around 3 million sweat glands in your body. Many of them are on the soles of your feet and on your palms, forehead, armpits, and cheeks. You get red eyes in photos because when the camera flash goes off, your pupils don't have enough time to constrict. A large burst of light reaches your retina and it bounces back. Food doesn't need gravity to get to your stomach. Your muscles constrict and relax to push it down. But birds need gravity to swallow. Unlike most other animals, we're walking on 2 legs, so we needed extra protection for the head directly exposed to the sun. That's why we have head hair. It also helps us retain heat at night. Our brain may not be big compared to the rest of the body, but it's always active, which produces heat, so the head hair insulates that area. When you blink, you're giving your brain a chance to do a micro nap and recharge. You blink between 20 to 30,000 times a day, which means you walk around with closed eyes around 10% of your waking hours. Your hair knows when you sleep. There are genes that regulate your body clock, and they're placed in the cells of hair follicles. That means scientists can tell if you're a morning bird or a late owl studying your hair. Your nails grow faster today than before. Studies from the 50s and the 70s say nails were growing slower, almost a quarter. Scientists believe it's because we eat more proteins these days, or we're just not chewing them as much.
You wake up 100 years from now and things are weird. Your body feels different. You check the mirror and, yup, it's true. You've got a second eyelid and no body hair? Sounds like sci-fi, but nope. There's actual science behind it. Think about how often you check your phone. A lot, right? Well, this might be why you have that second eyelid now. As screens took over our lives, we evolved this extra eyelid to filter out harmful blue light and reduce eye strain. Future you blinks and a translucent shield covers your eyes. It's like nature's way of protecting us from all that digital glare. Downside? We all look a bit more like robots. Now, Americans spend about 7 hours a day on the internet. Some researchers took this info and ran with it. Meet Mindy, the 3D model of humans 100 years from now. She's got the lowdown on what constant phone checking and endless office hours have done to us. Mindy's got an arched back, a thicker skull, a smaller brain, a 90-degree elbow, and something called a text claw. That doesn't feel right, does it? All those hours looking down at your phone strain your neck muscles and mess with your spine. But the text claws? That's next level weird. This mutation comes from always holding your smartphone. And those elbows? Permanently bent at 90 degrees, like some kind of stiff Barbie doll. Imagine trying to navigate crowded streets, bumping into people left and right. And body hair? We might lose it all in the future, but this is actually a pretty mysterious subject. Let's rewind the tape a bit. You've probably heard that body hair was used to protect us from harsh weather. One thing scientists have discovered is that our ancestors that started shedding hair had some pretty good advantages. The ones who lost the hair on their palms or wrists could handle stone tools and machinery way better than the other ones. There's also a famous theory known as the aquatic ape theory, which explains one reason for that. Like hippos and dolphins, we turned off the genes that produce fur. This idea suggests that our human ancestors that lived on the savannas of Africa migrated to oases during drier seasons. During these seasons, they hunted in shallow waters, and well, it turns out that hair is not a very good insulator in water, so our species lost their fur and developed a layer of fat. The question remains, in the future, will we deactivate these genes altogether and become totally hairless? Guess we'll have to wait and see. Geneticists are worried about something big: humans becoming too alike. There's a scientific risk of human alikeness or grand averaging. Open any social media app and you'll see it. Everyone dresses the same, talks the same, yada yada. But this sameness could halt human evolution. Evolution depends on genetic differences and passing them on. Over time, these differences should change the population. If the changes are big enough, a new species arises. But the three components needed for evolution, variation, natural selection, and geographic isolation, are pretty much fading away. Scientists call humans a single genetic continent, mixing and no longer breeding within cultural or ethnic groups. Given enough time, we might all start to look more alike. Here's a good one. Humans will develop to live longer, much longer than we do now. All along our evolution, we've been subject to external factors that determined our lifespan. Back in the Stone Ages and stuff, we were subject to dangerous predators or the encounter with other tribes other than ours that could harm us. As people would normally pass away at quite a young age, they had little room to develop important mutations. But when humans' mortality rates are lowered, the opposite happens. In the past 2 centuries, life expectancy soared to 70 years worldwide. The constant scientific development leads us to think humans might naturally evolve to live an average life of 100 years and more. Our lazy lifestyles are messing with our spines. We might end up with fewer vertebrae and shorter, bendier backs, making back pain less of a pain and perfect for our desk jobs. Future humans could be total slouchers, with standing tall becoming super rare. You know, all this talk is making me want to go for a walk. Since we're talking about lifestyle, we need to talk about food. All the processed soft foods we're eating are changing how we chew. Back in the day, when our bodies were taking form, we used to eat raw meat and plants. A study actually shows that the lower jaw reflected whether a population was primarily a hunter-gatherer or agriculturalist in nature. About 7 million years ago, our ancestors had long jaws and a face that projected forward. What do our jaws reflect about us now that our food is so soft? Some predictions say that 100+ years from now, humans might have smaller mouths with fewer teeth and weaker jaws. This also means that our faces will be smaller without much chin. Our jaws tucked in a wee bit more. Pollution isn't just bad for the planet, it's changing us too. Future generations might get bigger nostrils and better lungs to deal with bad air quality. Imagine humans with super-powered breathing systems, thriving in polluted environments. Breathing in the future will be a whole new ballgame. These predictions might sound wild, but they're based on scientific theories. As our environment and lifestyles change, so will our bodies, in fascinating and terrifying ways. Next time you look in the mirror, remember you're seeing the human body as it is today, but who knows what it'll look like tomorrow? Embrace the mystery of our evolving selves. Humans might lose their palmaris longus muscle, that tiny tendon in your wrist that many people don't even realize they have. It's pretty much the appendix of muscles, completely unnecessary. As we evolve, we'll likely say goodbye to this little tendon because we're not swinging from trees or doing intense grip exercises anymore. Our hands are occupied with texting, typing, and swiping. So in a few generations, we might look at our smooth, tendon-free wrists and think, evolution really Marie Kondo'd our muscles. Love your toes much? Well, then you can bid one of them farewell. Our toes help us keep our balance when we're walking. Research shows that our balance is shifting inwards. If our ancestors used to rely on all their toes for balance, we ourselves don't use all of them as much. This means that we'll need our pinky toes less and less. And if this trend keeps up, it won't be long before we bid them goodbye. Okay, so there's something called directed evolution, which literally means science replacing nature. Instead of leaving it to the hands of destiny or fate, why not decide our own future? We kind of already do that when we choose a partner out of appearance or personality traits. For thousands of years, hunter-gatherers arranged marriages seeking good hunters for their daughters. But I'm talking about stuff done in laboratories. From now onwards, we have the power to control the genes of our offspring. Science can screen for genetic mutations. It can also choose an embryo with a particular eye color and things like that. Yep, DNA control is a thing of the future. If you think it doesn't get more bizarre than that, wait for this. Someone asked an AI to mock up some pictures of what humans will look like 1,000 years from now. According to this AI software, our faces will be covered in a web of wiring motors. It's like a crossover between Frankenstein and the Terminator. Perhaps this is the beauty standard of the future. Yikes! Meet Graham. Graham is a distant descendant of humanity whose body has evolved to survive a car crash. He isn't a CG model. He's a life-size statue made of silicon and real human hair. Graham is a piece of modern art. He's a speculation of what human bodies look like in the years ahead. Graham was created for a road safety campaign, but this artist depicts hyper-realistic humanoids in many different forms, even possible hybrids between humans and other species. It looks pretty weird at first. But I mean, at this rate, anything seems possible for our collective future.
People with albinism have little to no melanin, the pigment that colors hair, skin, and eyes. It's a rare condition to have. In the USA, just 1 in 18,000 to 20,000 people is albino. But ocular albinism is even more unique. Experts don't know exact numbers, but they think only 1 out of 50,000 individuals has it. If a person has ocular albinism, nothing but their eyes gets affected. Their skin and hair might be a bit lighter than those of their family members, but the difference isn't that big. Bright sunlight makes 17 to 35% of people sneeze. This phenomenon is called the photic sneeze reflex. In the Greek language, it's called sun sneezing. It happens when the nervous system misfires. When it happens, one of the nerves might get the reflexes wrong. And then, bright sunlight not only makes your pupils contract, but also activates the nose membranes. When natural, fair hair is rare in adults. It almost always darkens with age. People who are more likely to keep their hair color light are those living in the north. The Bajau is a group of nomadic people that live in the waters around the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Thanks to a rare DNA mutation, they can stay underwater for up to 13 minutes. The Bajau people have evolved spleens that are way larger than average. This feature provides them with a genetic advantage. Sea nomads needed to hunt for fish or look for underwater stuff that can be used in crafts. A particular gene mutation results in super dense bones that are almost impossible to break. They're several times tougher than the average person's bones. These people's skin is also less prone to aging. It might sound cool, but there are drawbacks. When such tough bones grow, they often put too much pressure on the nerves surrounding them and the brain. There are 3 kinds of cone cells in the average person's eyes. They help to recognize the colors in the blue, red, and green spectrums. Thanks to them, most people can distinguish around 1 million different shades. But those with tetrachromacy have 4 cones in their eyes. This feature allows them to see up to 100 million different hues. However rare this vision anomaly is, it's still much more common in women than in men. By the way, most people with tetrachromacy don't realize they see the world brighter than others. Only a bit more than 8% of people have counterclockwise hair whorls on their heads. A hair whorl can be single or double. Very few people have triple whorls, but those do exist. Not all experts agree with this theory, but some researchers claim there's a connection between handedness and the direction of a hair whorl. Left-handed people are 5 times more likely to have a counterclockwise whorl than those with the dominant right hand. Only 1 to 5 people in every 10,000 have an unusually shaped pupil. In most cases, it looks a bit like a keyhole or a cat's eye. This eye disorder is called iris coloboma. Scientists believe it's mostly genetic in origin. Super tasters are people who taste particular flavors more strongly than others. They have more taste buds. Those are small mushroom-shaped bumps littering the tongue. They're covered with taste receptors that tell your brain what you're eating. This feature also makes super tasters more sensitive to certain foods, for example, too sweet, bitter, or salty. They also have more pain receptors on their tongues. That's why such people avoid spicy food. The numbers vary around the world, but in general, 25 to 30% of people are super tasters. From 40 to 50% are average tasters, and 25 to 30% are non-tasters. Those have poor taste perception. Less than 1% of the world's population has a rare condition called dextrocardia. That's when the heart points toward the right side of the chest, not the left one. In rare cases, people with this unique quality have all their internal organs on the mirror image side of the body. Only 1 to 5 people in 10,000 have what's called perfect or absolute pitch. It's the ability to identify and recreate musical tones. This feature often runs in families. It's also more likely to occur in people who started their musical training before they turned 6. Ancient Greeks had stories about fire-breathing creatures called chimeras. They were a fearsome mixture of a goat, lion, and snake. In real life, chimeras are people who have 2 different sets of DNA. Scientists have recorded no more than 100 cases of human chimerism. The DEC2 gene mutation allows people to get away with just a few hours of sleep a night and still feel great. Such short sleepers don't feel tired, and they never sleep in. Their usual wake-up time is 4 or 5 a.m. Wow, not me. Only up to 5% of people have this feature. Scientists from the University of California have also made an interesting discovery. They claim that people with the DEC2 mutation need less time to perform certain tasks than regular sleepers. Morton's toe is a foot structure where the second toe is longer than the first one. Only 3 to 22% of people in the world have their feet shaped this way. Michelangelo's David and the Statue of Liberty are among them. Unlike the majority of the world's population, 1.5% of people have just one palmar crease. That's the line running across your palm. Men are more likely to have a single palmar crease than women. Most often, this feature runs in families. Only 3% of people in the world have lines that form the letters X on both of their palms. In many cultures, this rare feature is believed to be a sign of a strong personality. 1 in every 500 people has an extra rib called cervical. The average human has 24 ribs, 12 on each side of the body. But those lucky ones can have 25 or even 26. Excessive ribs are more often found in women. They're located in the cervical spine area and grow just above the collarbones. Their size can be different, from just barely developed to fully grown ones. In most cases, cervical ribs don't affect a person's well-being unless they grow too large. In this case, they do cause discomfort. No more than 50 people have ever had Rh-null blood type, so precious that it was nicknamed golden blood. It can be donated to people who have incredibly rare blood types and can't accept any other. For the first time, golden blood was discovered in an Australian Aboriginal woman. If you have a tiny hole near your ear, you're unique. It occurs in only 5% of people in the world. In the USA, less than 1% of people are born with this hole. In Asia and some parts of Africa, the number is a bit higher, from 4 to 10%. This feature is often inherited genetically. It can be present on one or both ears. This distribution is 50-50. The hole may go all the way through, or it can be a dimple, dent, or even a small lump. There's a theory that the little hole is an atavism, left from the times when all living beings had gills. There's a gene mutation that helps people keep their bad cholesterol levels extremely low. In this case, the gene instructs the body to produce a protein that curbs the amount of cholesterol in the blood. Unfortunately, only 2 to 3% of people have this useful ability. About 65% of the world's population have loop-shaped fingerprints. Another 30% of fingerprints are whorl-shaped. And only 5% of people have arch-shaped fingerprints. They can be plain or tinted arches. Around 35% of the world's population don't have to worry about the pain and inconvenience of wisdom teeth breaking through the gums simply because they don't have them. But around 5 million not-so-lucky people go through wisdom teeth removal every year. Some people have more than one row of eyelashes. This phenomenon is a genetic mutation called dystochiasis. A person with this condition has a second set of eyelashes growing behind the first. All these thick, lush lashes sure look beautiful, but they can also cause some discomfort. Some hairs can start growing in the wrong direction or in the place where an oil gland is supposed to be. It can cause irritation and tearing. Experts are sure that Tibetan people have genetically changed to be able to live at high altitudes. They have a gene that helps to adapt to falling oxygen levels amazingly fast. This evolutionary mutation has been one of the fastest ever recorded in people. It took a mere 3,000 years to develop. Okay, yes, it's possible to rotate your eyes, but you can't do it without some practice. Our eyes have 4 major muscles that allow them to move up and down and side to side. There are actually 2 more muscles that we use without knowing as well. These muscles help you roll or rotate your eyes. We can focus on something rotating, and our eyes will start rotating with it. This helps us have a stable image and keep a clear vision, like an autofocus on a camera. When you move your head side to side and up and down, your eyes will move in the opposite direction. The average human eye has 3 cones, which lets us see red, green, and blue spectrums of light. All combined, this gives us the ability to see around 1 million different colors. Tetrachromats see the ultraviolet shades as well, as they've got 4 cones in their eyes. Pause here to quickly test how many colors you can count. There were 39 colors there. If you counted a lot, you might be a tetrachromat. Some animals, like bats and dolphins, can see using echolocation. There are also humans that can do something similar called flash sonar. They can use clicking sounds to make a 3D image of an area in their minds, allowing them to easily navigate through it. The more they click, the more flashes they get about a room or an area, giving them a better understanding of the place. Being pitch perfect is astonishingly rare. Less than 1 in 10,000 people have it. It allows people to accurately identify musical notes of all kinds. One of the many advantages of this talent is that it allows people to listen to a song and immediately know what key it's in. Hey, without music, life would be flat. People with dystichiasis are born with a second set of eyelashes that grow from the inner layer of the eyelid. While it may look pretty to some, these extra lashes can irritate the eye and cause problems like sensitivity to light, droopy eyelids, tearing, and inflammation. There are a few ways to treat the condition, like soft contacts, lasers, and cryotherapy. Dutch health guru Wim Hof claims that his breathing, meditation, and training have helped him gain all kinds of superhuman abilities. He's trained his body to adapt to extreme temperatures and even learned how to raise his own body temperature. He's also been able to adapt more quickly to altitude changes. He has even claimed that his training methods and strict diet and exercise regimen have improved his immune system. Now, we're meant to get anywhere from 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night to function the next day. But there are some lucky people out there that only need 6 hours or less a night. This is caused by a genetic anomaly, and there don't seem to be any adverse effects from having it. We have about 10,000 taste buds, but some people have many more than that, super tasters. Thanks to their powerful ability to taste sweet things like oranges, strawberries, and candy are almost too sweet, while bitter things like broccoli, cabbage, spinach, grapefruit, and coffee are overpowering. Well, thanks anyway, but I'll keep what I have. Most people have a total of 24 ribs. No, not at the restaurant. In your body. There's a chance you might be one of the few that has 25 ribs instead. About 1 in 200 people have a cervical rib, a spare rib just above the first rib. It's usually not even noticed because it's above the collarbone and pretty thin. Hey, when's lunch? I got hungry for some reason. Chances are you have an innie belly button. That's because only about 10% of the world's population have an outie, making it pretty rare. It has nothing to do with how our umbilical cord is cut. Our belly button stores a bit of fat beneath it, and it's this that determines what kind of belly button you'll end up with. So don't blame the doctor. The type you have is completely down to genetics. If you've ever experienced high altitude, you should know how hard it is on your body. Even just walking up a hill can be a difficult task. Give it a few days, though, and things will become easier. Your lungs, blood cells, and body will adapt quicker than you think, letting you hold on to that precious oxygen for longer. This adaptation will last for as long as you stay up high, and you'll go back to normal after a while back at normal altitude. When we submerge ourselves in water, it causes our heart rate to drop and oxygen consumption to slow. In recent years, free divers have pushed the limits of human lungs by going down a record of 700 feet. One person held his breath for more than 22 minutes underwater. We don't know what the limits are yet, but people are testing the boundaries. When a person has a photographic memory or total recall, this is called eidetic memory. It's the ability to accurately recall sounds, images, or other things from your memory. Some can even be told a date in a calendar from years ago and tell you what day it actually was. Unfortunately, you can't get an eidetic memory with practice. You have to be born with it. An ultramarathon runner named Dean Karnazes once ran for 350 consecutive miles and didn't even sleep for 3 days. He's most famous for running 50 marathons in all 50 U.S. states in 50 consecutive days. He finished this achievement off by completing the New York Marathon in only 3 hours. Some people have an incredible ability to find their way without using a compass or even the stars. This unique navigational ability has been linked to the strength of the signals given off in a certain part of the brain called the entorhinal region. Place the back of your wrist and forearm on a table, then squeeze your thumb and pinky together. Do you see a muscle raise up in the middle of your forearm? If you don't worry, it's vestigial. That means that it doesn't do anything useful anymore. Hey wait, that's me. It's an old muscle that we used to use for climbing, and around 10% of the human population doesn't even have it anymore. If you can wiggle your ears, you can thank your auricular muscles. Those are the ones on the outside of your ear. Even if you can't wiggle your ears, the muscles are still there. Compared to other mammals, our ears can't move much. Some mammals can even fully turn their ears to locate sounds. Just watch your dog or cat. A dog's third eyelid might be a bit creepy the first time you see it, but we also have a third eyelid of sorts. But this human body part can't move by itself. It just covers a tiny part of the inside corner of your eye. It's likely that it used to serve a purpose, but it's pretty much useless now. Sometimes you just need a really good cry. It's also good for you too. Shedding tears when you cry helps release your stress hormones. It can also stimulate the production of endorphins as well, our body's natural answer to aspirin. Your brain replaces itself every 2 months, your liver every 6 weeks, your epidermis or just skin every month. Even your stomach lining replaces itself every few days. If your body didn't do this, the acids inside of your stomach wouldn't just digest food, they'd also start digesting you. So, alright, what's eating you? Oh, you. The human lungs contain around 1,500 miles of airways and a total surface area of about 754 square feet when laid flat. But I would suggest that you don't do that. Your lungs are on the clock 24/7, keeping you alive and breathing, taking 12 to 15 breaths a minute or about 17,000 a day. Your left lung is slightly smaller than your right lung to make room for your big heart. After years of wear and tear, your feet may weaken enough that they seem to grow. This can cause our arches to flatten, meaning broader and longer feet eventually. It won't happen to everyone, but people who get swollen feet or ankles are more prone. If it does happen to you, you've got time. By age 70 or 80, your feet would have only gone up one size. Taste is influenced a lot by the temperature of what you're eating or drinking. For example, hot coffee seems less bitter and tastes much better because the heat tricks our bitter-detecting taste buds. The same goes for cold coffee, too. The cold masks the bitterness flavor and creates a more pleasant aftertaste. Room temperature coffee doesn't smell the same or taste nice because the bitterness comes on more strongly. Brushing your teeth too aggressively is very possible, and it's not good for your teeth at all. It'll wear down the enamel and make them sensitive to hot and cold foods. Teeth don't repair themselves, so you gotta take care of them. Slow down your brushing and take a full 2 minutes to get your teeth properly clean. Don't forget the floss too.
You wake up one morning, and while you're brushing your teeth, you notice a lump on the inside of your mouth, under your tongue. Immediately, you're concerned. You've never noticed this before? But not to worry. It's just torus mandibularis, a simple bony growth on the mandible of your mouth. If you have this extra bit of bone, you are part of the 40% of people with this anomaly. Although it can be more common depending on where you're from. For example, in the USA, this only occurs in 10% of the population. Bones are significant pieces within our bodies. We have 206 of them altogether. But some people may have an extra bone that they weren't expecting. We all have 12 pairs of ribs, equaling to 24 in total. However, 0.5% of people may have 25. The 25th is known as a cervical rib. Present from birth, it grows from the base of the neck, just above the collarbone. It can be on either side, as a fully formed rib, or just a thin strand of tissue fibers. There are some parts of our body that have remained with us throughout our evolution as a species. and some of us no longer share that same physical trait. The palmaris longus is a small tendon located in your wrist. By pressing the pads of your fourth finger and thumb, then clenching your wrist, the inside of your wrist will show the palmaris longus popping out. If this isn't visible, then you are part of a relatively small percentage that no longer possesses it. Lacking it has no effects on the strength of your grip, but being absent does give a decreased pinch strength in the fourth and fifth finger. It's believed that this muscle was actively used sometime in the evolutionary process of our species. It hasn't affected our bodies in any way, and it's merely a trait that some of us continue to have. It's also not dependent on either hand, regardless of which hand is dominant. Which hand do you use more often? If you're left-handed, you're part of the 10% club. And if you're ambidextrous, you're within the 1% to use both of your hands dominantly. Most ambidextrous people initially only use their left hand. Ambidexterity and left-handedness share the indication that they are using both sides of the brain. Right-handed people are generally dominant only to the left side of the brain. We all have tailbones, a reminder of our long story of evolution. We stopped using our tails around 25 million years ago. Although, while we are still growing as embryos, we go through the process of growing a tail, and after about 8 weeks, we lose it completely. There are some cases of humans being born with a tail. There are about 25 confirmed cases known to scientists. Those born with tails, though, won't have any real benefit, other than what the tailbone does for balance anyway. The tails have no function other than physically being there, as they have no bones. The tails only consist of nerves, vessels, and muscles. Do you find that you are a picky eater? Do you think that coriander tastes like soap? Or you can't stand pineapple on pizza? This may be due to what kind of taster you are. Up to 30% of people are considered super tasters and will experience different levels of enjoyment or disappointment from their foods. Food that is bitter to the super taster will likely be sweet to average tasters, who make up 40% of people. There are also 30% of people who are non-tasters and won't find anything too exciting. Do you have the ability to identify musical notes? About 1 in 10,000 people can flawlessly distinguish perfect pitch naturally. Although this doesn't necessarily mean that they will be the next big pop star. They're just able to easily identify a specific musical note upon listening to it. Our eye colors are so diverse. The difference in light exposure to eyes throughout the world determines how much melanin is produced, which helps create many different shades of color. Since migration has become more common over the past 100 years, the variations of shades of color are numerous. Your genes, of course, also playing a huge part. We could list hundreds of different shades of eye color to show how many variations there are, but we'll limit the distinct categories down to 6 main color groups to keep this brief. The vast majority of people have brown eyes. About 79% of the world's population share this eye color. Once, all humans only had the brown pigmentation, until around 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, when humans migrated to Northern Europe. A mutation occurred, helping the eyes to adapt to the change of light. Blue eyes became the most common of the mutated coloration, and all of them today can be traced back to one ancestor from Europe. Today, blue eyes make up around 10% of the human population. Amber and hazel eyes each take up 5% respectively. Gray eyes are up to 3%, and the rarest of eye colors are green ones, consisting of only 2%. Rarer still is heterochromia iridum, where both eyes are of different colors. It's inherited and also affected by other genetic factors. Only 1% of the human population have this incredibly rare attribute. Although blue eyes have become more common, they're only more prominent within areas where people contribute similar variants of genes, since blue eyes are a recessive trait. just like red hair, which only occurs within up to 2% of the population. If you have red hair and blue eyes, you will be part of the smallest percentile for hair and eye variety that makes up only 0.17% of the human population. Although green, gray, and hazel eyes are less abundant than blue, their genes are more dominant. So, within the small pool of redheads, blue eyes are less likely to occur. The melanin that has helped mutate eye colors can also have other effects on the human body. A genetic mutation that affects the melanin occurs in 0.005% of people in the USA, creating albinism. The occurrence differs in many ways throughout the world, the same as the effects with eyes. In albinism, the pigment production is altered to distribute major cells that affect the coloring of the skin, the hair, and the eyes. Most people with albinism will have snow-white skin, snow-white hair, and their eyes are a pale blue-pinkish color, the pupil itself being red. The redness comes from the light reflecting off the vessels in the retina. There is another form of albinism which has a smaller amount of pigmentation, and the shade of skin and hair are slightly darker. Albinism occurs not only in humans, but practically all mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. Do you have a small hole at the front of your ear above the ear canal? This is the preauricular pit. During the first 6 weeks of a child's development, long before being born, the auricle, which is the external part of your ear, will develop. The preauricular pit forms when the auricle doesn't fully fuse. This occurs within less than 1% of humans. Although there's speculation that having this little hole is the remnant of gills that we once had from our seafaring ancestors, there's nothing solid to confirm this theory. There are some unique things we have that give us an advantage in everyday life. Some people carry a gene mutation of the DEC2 gene, also known in proper English as familial natural short sleepers. Essentially, it means people within this 1% only require about 6 hours of sleep each day. Most people will probably feel burned out after a day of this, but those lucky enough to be within this 1% will be sure to make the most out of their day. Have you ever looked at a picture and noticed that the color of something was different to what someone else can see? It may be that you have a rare ability to see more colors than everyone else, possibly seeing 100 million different kinds of shades. If you do, you're part of the rare group of people called tetrachromats, who have 4 cone cells in their eyes, unlike everyone else who has 3, and are identified as a trichromat. Studies are varied on who is part of this rare ocular phenomenon, though it's more prominent in females. It's suggested that up to 15% of women have this rare capability. Incredibly, it's an ability also shared with some species of birds, insects, fish, and other mammals.
You're out for a couple of miles with an ingrown toenail. Ouch! Now think about those folks who tackle extreme races and marathons. To run their best, they need top-notch training and solid shoes. But there's one more thing: perfectly trimmed toenails. And trust me, keeping those nails in check is an art in itself, because there are many rules on how to do that right. To get ahead of nagging toenail issues, some athletes choose to have their toenails removed altogether, which helps them dodge problems like bruising and ingrown nails. Take Charlotte Vassarelli, an ultra-runner who had to say goodbye to both of her big toenails after relentless pain had been affecting her stride. The procedure takes about 45 minutes. A podiatrist will numb the toe, apply a tourniquet, and carefully remove the nail right down to the root. They then use carbolic acid to stop it from growing back. Recovery is pretty swift, but sometimes it can take a few tries to ensure the nail is completely gone. Now, let's say you've accidentally lost your toenail. And since you aren't a professional athlete, you decide to help it grow back. It will take you up to 1.5 years to fully recover. They grow 3 times more slowly than fingernails, only pushing around 1.6 millimeters a month. Plus, the older we get, the slower the process gets. With age, our toenails thicken and round out, so the growth rate slows down. It's not that everybody's feet smell bad, but if you ever notice someone's tootsies stink, here's an explanation for you. Our feet have around 250,000 sweat glands. For comparison, our armpits have 10 times fewer, only around 25,000. However, it's not the sweat that makes the feet smell. Bacteria are in charge of the stench. The primary reason is oftentimes lack of ventilation and fungus that thrive in wet environments, such as sweaty feet. Farts and burps are just a normal part of being human. When we chow down, our small intestines don't get around to digesting all foods perfectly, and gas is a byproduct of a digestive process, when bacteria break down leftovers in your gut. All that gas eventually has to escape, which means, on average, we let out about 12 to 25 farts a day. And don't worry, holding in gas won't affect you seriously. Sure, it can lead to a bit of tummy trouble, but being polite at dinner won't mess with your health in any serious way. Gross as it is, pus actually tells you that your body is doing its job. That gooey stuff, whether it's white, yellow, green, or even brown, is just a buildup of white blood cells fighting off an infection. It means your immune system is kicking in like it should. Of course, if you see pus after major surgery, that's a flag to reach out to your doctor. But for smaller injuries, pus is just your body's way of healing, even if it's super yucky. You can even call it the white cell's precious juice, if you will. Can you give yourself a pinch without feeling anything at all? Go ahead, grab a bit of skin on your elbow and give it a good squeeze. Surprisingly, it won't feel as bad as you'd think. That's because different spots in your skin have different kinds of nerve endings. Your elbow skin is like the superhero of skin. It's tough and has fewer pain receptors. On the flip side, the more delicate parts of your body are packed with nerve endings, making them sensitive and a bit more scream-worthy when you accidentally bump into something. You can munch on anything without actually tasting it. All you have to do is pinch your nose and take a big bite of that not-so-appetizing meal. Bet it doesn't taste like much. The thing is, our taste buds only detect 5 flavors: sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and that savory umami, the flavor you get from various types of meat. Still, it's not your tongue, but your sense of smell that really brings the flavor party to life. If you hold your nose, you cut off the aroma and leave your brain to rely only on those 5 basic tastes. That's a great life hack when you gotta eat something you don't like but have to. If you're snoozing away and someone blows a puff of air at your eyes, they won't even budge. But if you're awake, your eyes are gonna flutter like crazy. So next time you want to test if someone's really sleeping or not, try this little trick. You might notice that one nostril feels more stuffed up when you have a cold, but that's completely normal. It's not unusual for one nostril to be more active while the other takes a little break, and they actually switch roles throughout the day. This is known as the nasal cycle. Typically, one nostril does about 75% of breathing for a couple of hours before the other one takes over. Since this cycle is controlled by your body's nervous system, you can enhance this natural pattern by consciously switching nostrils with each breath, which can help you relax. It might seem a bit goofy at first, but it could be a fun trick to get your kid to try when they need to calm down. The bones in your feet account for about 25% of all the bones in your body. There are 206 bones in total, and each foot has 26 of them, so that's 52 bones for your 2 feet combined. If you do the math, that's roughly 25.24% of your total bone count. Genetically, humans are like 99.9% the same. But not all of our genes are actually human. Out of the roughly 20,000 genes in our DNA, about 8% come from ancient viruses. Plus, another 40% is made up of repetitive sequences that scientists think might also be viral. These viral genes have the ability to move around and replicate themselves, which could be linked to some health conditions. So, turns out you're barely half human when it comes to your genetic makeup. Believe it or not, it's rare, but some people can actually grow teeth in their ovaries. These weird growths are called teratomas, and they can contain all sorts of stuff, like hair follicles, skin, muscle, and more. The biggest teratoma ever recorded was a whopping 18 by 10 inches, and it was taken out of a 74-year-old woman. Since the brain doesn't have pain receptors, doctors can do brain surgeries with patients awake and sometimes even chatting. It might sound like a scene from a horror movie, but having patients alert during the procedure actually helps surgeons avoid causing any serious harm. It's a bit unsettling to think about, though. Surprise! Your brain is the fattiest organ in your body. It's about 60% fat, and that's a good thing. Those fatty acids are essential for optimal brain function. Imbalances could up your risk for many health issues. Still, when it comes to having kids, your seemingly fat brain gets smaller as if it's on a diet. Moms and dads experience shrinkage in areas tied to social cues and decision-making. These changes are totally normal and help with parenting. However, no matter if you have kids or not, your brain power still declines by the time you hit 24. Studies show that cognitive speed starts to drop, and you keep losing about 15% every 15 years after. So if you're nearly 40, don't be surprised if things take a bit longer to process. Your ring finger can give away your marital status, but it also has some interesting secrets even before you tie the knot. Back in 1998, evolutionary biologist John Manning found out that if your ring finger is longer, it might mean you had higher levels of prenatal testosterone. Since then, several studies have backed this up, showing that folks with longer ring fingers tend to excel in sports. If you've just checked your palms and your fingers are really long, don't be too fast to judge. Not all scientists agree with that. However, there's some proof that men with longer ring fingers can be a bit angrier than other people. Maybe that's why boxing gloves resemble mittens, to keep you guessing about who the real champ is.
So get this, if someone managed to uncoil all the DNA in the human body, it would stretch out to around 10 billion miles. Hey, do the math. That's twice the distance from Earth to Pluto. And that's not the only awesome thing our body is capable of. Trillions of nerve connections are powering your memory nonstop. According to studies, after looking at 2,500 images for a mere 3 seconds, most people can recall if they have seen these pictures with 92% accuracy. Wow! Your body glows, emitting tiny amounts of barely visible light. This glow is the product of biochemical reactions going on inside your organism. The light waxes and wanes throughout the day, but even though it is visible, you can't detect it with the unaided eye. From 1 to 6 pounds of your body weight is made up of bacteria, and from 100 million to 1 billion bacteria can live on just one tooth in your mouth. So please brush. It's impossible to taste your food without saliva, all because the chemicals in your food must be dissolved in saliva before they get detected by your taste buds. Even though it sounds like a myth, eating too many carrots can indeed turn your skin orange. Carrots have high amounts of beta-carotene. That's a compound that can cause carotenemia. If you have too much of this compound in your bloodstream, it'll hold on to parts of your body with thicker skin. I'm talking about the soles of your feet, your knees, elbows, palms, and even certain areas around your nose. But worry not, this condition is not dangerous. You can easily reverse it by decreasing the amount of beta-carotene-filled foods you consume. The chin muscles, scientifically known as the mentalis muscles, look pretty quirky, giving us mixed feelings. Just look at these creepy tiny tentacles. And still, they make it possible for us to create all kinds of facial expressions that involve the lips, chin, and cheeks. And yes, they are the culprits behind those weird wrinkles and crevices on the skin of your chinny chin. All because these muscles don't pull on themselves, but yank on the skin. Now, people can live without some organs, leading a normal life. The human body consists of singular organs and those that come in pairs. And speaking of the latter, you only need one of those to survive. Your small intestine is actually not so small. It's taller than you, measuring around 23 feet. Now, the cornea, that transparent front cover on your eyes, doesn't have any blood supply. Instead, it receives oxygen directly from the air. Human beings develop their unique fingerprints very early in life, while they're still embryos, just 3 months after being conceived. By the way, even if fingerprints get badly damaged, they tend to grow back to their original pattern. All people are born with a diving reflex. It can get activated and shut bodily functions if one is drowning or is submerged in the water. The human brain is by no means smooth, but if you decided to flatten all those wrinkles covering it, the brain would be the size of a pillowcase, but not as useful. Newborn babies only blink once or twice in a minute. For comparison, a grown-up person blinks at least 10 times within the same time. Our lungs are the only organs that can float on the water, all because they're made up of around 300 million balloon-like structures called alveoli. Also, even if we're perfectly healthy, our lungs are never completely germ-free or sterile. Your nose is a superhero. It's your very own heater, filter, and humidifier. This organ is lined with tiny bone-like shells called turbinates. They contain blood vessels capable of heating the air and goblet cells that can help humidify the air. Also, the air you breathe gets filtered in your nose before going further to your lungs. Now, every time you eat something, your esophagus, the organ your food travels through to reach the stomach, moves in a series of wave-like contractions, pushing the food forward. This is known as peristalsis. There's a bond between your digestive system and your brain, the gut-brain axis. This is why stress or brain issues can affect the way your body digests food. Now, even though hiccups are typically harmless and resolve by themselves after a couple of minutes, they aren't exactly pleasant. So you should probably know that they might occur because of changes in temperature. The density of your brain increases throughout your whole life, all because new neural connections pop up. They appear because the structure of the brain keeps changing too. If you don't want to sneeze, press the skin on the bridge of your nose with your fingers. When you do it, your brain receives an alarm signal. Very quickly, it puts the brake on all those other processes, including the sneezing reflex. By the way, studies have found that sneezing is your nose's way to reset. A sneeze reboots the cells that line the inside of your nose. They're called cilia. The part of your brain that's responsible for vision is in the back of your head. Interestingly, the right side of your brain controls the vision on the left side and vice versa. If you're in some loud place, for example in a club or at a concert, close your ears to better hear your friends. Push the tragus, which is that pointy skin-covered cartilage in front of the ear canal, into your ear. Then turn this ear toward your friend. On average, when a person snores, the sound doesn't get louder than 60 decibels. That's as loud as a regular conversation. But sometimes, the noise level can reach 80 decibels. That's as loud as a working food blender. Just like salamanders regrow their tails, humans might be able to regenerate cartilage. That's the rubber-like stuff surrounding your joints. Scientists have recently discovered that cartilage could repair itself. This process is likely to be the most effective at the ankle, not that effective in the knee, and the least effective in the hip. Now, if a person has anosmia, which is also called smell blindness, they don't distinguish and detect smells. Your eyes never stop moving while taking in visual information. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see the whole picture. These movements go unnoticed because your brain is a great video editor. It stabilizes the images and connects tons of fragments into one smooth video. The liver is the only human organ that can regenerate completely. Even if it's a mere 25% of the original liver weight, the organ can get back to its full size. Your mouth burns when you're snacking on pineapple because while you're eating this fruit, it's eating you back. Well, kind of. Pineapple is the only known food that contains bromelain. That's an enzyme that breaks down proteins. Luckily, your stomach acid knows how to deal with the offending enzyme. Now, we also have bacteria that can produce electricity living in our intestines. These bacteria give off electrons, which creates tiny electrical currents. This might be the bacteria's way to generate energy. Déjà vu
Might actually be something like a brain processing lag.
There's a theory claiming that it might happen when your brain is moving information from one part to another. If there's even the tiniest delay in that process, your brain will get the same information twice. In this case, it'll process it as an event that happened before. The DEC2 gene mutation allows people to have just a few hours of sleep a night and still feel great. They don't get tired and never sleep in. On average, such people wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. No more than 5% of the world's population has this feature. Your ears might pop or even hurt when you're on an airplane. You can solve this problem by simply chewing some gum. This opens up your eustachian tube. That's a small passage that connects your throat and your middle ear. Opening this passage helps equalize the pressure in your ears and puts an end to the popping. You can also yawn to open up the eustachian tubes. Your feet are likely to become bigger with time, just like your nose and your ears. You see, when people grow older, ligaments and tendons in their feet weaken. This makes the arches flatter, and the feet become wider and longer. Now, nobody really knows why we need the appendix, but it's always at the back of the book. Wait, wrong appendix. Some researchers claim the human appendix helped our ancestors process the tree bark and whatever they were eating at that time. As we have a way more balanced diet now, the appendix can disappear from our bodies without any consequences. Another purposeless thing in our bodies is the wisdom teeth. Yeah, they used to come in handy when dentists didn't exist, but now we can ideally make do without them. Your brain will grow by roughly 2% if you venture into space. Under normal gravity, it's thought that fluid in the brain naturally moves downwards when we stand upright. But there is evidence that microgravity prevents this, resulting in fluid accumulation in the brain and skull. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at age 30, and it starts shrinking at 40. It happens to everyone, so you just have to go with it and keep your brain busy and nimble. If you stare into your eyes in the mirror, you'll see a small pink circle settled in the corner of your eye. This is your third eyelid, useless for us but valuable for animals, like birds, to keep dust and scattered debris from getting into their eyes. This might sound familiar to you if you've heard of natural selection. In short, natural selection keeps body parts throughout generations, but some of them are harmful, so they're phased out in the next generation, and others that aren't staying, just like the third eyelid. Not only your brain shrinks as you get older, you too shrink dramatically. The bones get more brittle, the backbone gets compressed. It works vice versa too. When you rest at night, your bones kind of relax too, so you wake up taller than when you went to bed last night. Our ears help us keep the balance, so hearing isn't their only duty. Our vestibular system occupies the inner ear. Canals in your inner ear contain fluid and tiny sensors that look somewhat like hairs, helping you keep your balance. As for hairs, only a few body parts aren't covered with them. These are palms, the soles of the feet, and lips. Hairs grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. Mine does a great job. And not only lint, our belly buttons have an entire animal encyclopedia in them, with a range of about 70 different bacteria. Some of them can also be found in soil in Japan, and even some bacteria typical for polar ice caps. See, you have a whole naval expedition going on and didn't even know it. Only about 43% of you is you. You're over 50% tiny little creatures that mainly live in your gut and other body parts without ever leaving it. Still, even though your cells are fewer than microbial ones, there are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. With this in mind, your genes are less than half of what you consist of. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, it'll be anywhere from 2 to 20 million genes and their combinations. If you sleep, and I recommend that you do, it doesn't mean all of your body sleeps. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take time. One thing that indeed rests while you're sleeping is your nose. You won't smell anything nasty in your sleep. The thing is that your sense of smell deactivates at night. If there's some terrible smell in your bedroom, you won't even be bothered. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish around 10,000 smells. Nope. Recent research showed that people could indicate more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and odors can even evoke some distant memories. Meanwhile, our strongest and most emotional memories are usually fake. It's the way the central memory works. It gives us the confidence to believe everything we remember is real, even though we should be confident about fewer details. Now, you don't mind if I call you a mammal, do you? Well, among us mammals, only humans can always walk on two hind limbs and keep that posture for their entire lives. You may want to say that kangaroos or gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a third leg, and gorillas use the help of their long arms to keep balance. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mainly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. And vice versa, when there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. Our height, shape of our body, and skin color depend a lot on where our ancestors used to live, but we can adapt to new conditions even within our lifespan. For example, if you move from the plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you drive from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will change pigmentation slightly to adapt. Our lifespan is programmed within our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. If we find a way to trick ourselves into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. But we'd be a huge mass of wrinkles by then. Body fat acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might as well protect those organs from serious damage. Your skull isn't a single bone. It consists of 22 different bones, many of which are fused to protect your brain. The mandible, or the lower jaw, is the only skull bone that's only attached to your head with connective tissues and muscles. This is what makes it so mobile. You can move it in any direction you like. And the smallest bone in your whole body is inside your ear. It's called the stapes, and it's no larger than a grain of rice. Some of the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs, they're in your head. The masseter is the primary muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you to chew your food. We've got two really fast muscles. They control the eyelids opening. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection. So, when the reflex is triggered, these muscles shut the eyes within less than a tenth of a second. We recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees, because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1 million combinations on average. Your stomach has an impressive capacity, holding up to a half a gallon of liquids, a whole large bottle of Coke. It's pretty hard to estimate how much hard food you can squeeze into your stomach, since the food is processed with your teeth before it gets down there. There's not enough room for a whole turkey, but who knows, probably a good-sized chicken might fit it. And hey, like my grandmother said, there's always room for ice cream. Now, show me where your stomach with all that cola, chicken, and ice cream is. If you're pointing at your tummy, nope, it's up there, hidden in between your ribs. Your tummy is full of intestines. What? What's happening? You were so tired, couldn't wait for your face to hit that fragrant pillow. You could barely hold your head up at 9 p.m. Now you're just rolling around in bed, changing positions, everything's so annoyingly sudden. Is it better to cover your feet or leave them uncovered? Should you sleep on your back, front, left, or right side? There's some moonlight coming through your window, so you take a peek at the other bed in the room. Your friend over there is sleeping so deeply. Asleep after about a minute. So unfair. You're spending the night because tomorrow you're both taking a small trip to a nearby town. Of course, you'll have to get up at 5 a.m. Yay! Oh, and just look at the time now. Why can't you fall asleep? Why? Well, last week you and a couple of friends went camping in the woods, and your struggles were similar. You got very tired after a long day of carrying all your stuff, walking around, preparing food, hours talking by the campfire. Your eyes were half closed. You thought you'd fall asleep in seconds, but then, nothing. Eyes wide open, every little thing bothered you, and no sleeping position was right. So I ask you, why? The first night effect, that's why. That's what you call it when you have sleep struggles in a new place. Sleep is a great thing, but evolution has made it a bit inconvenient for us from time to time. While sleeping, the brain actually shuts off for a couple of hours. That leaves you pretty unprotected. You can't spot any potential danger or defend yourself if something happens. There are animals, like dolphins and whales, that developed a sleeping system where only one part of their brain rests at a time. The other part is awake and ready to roll. We have a somewhat similar thing going on in our heads. Not that there are any dangers in your friend's room, although, when you think about all that dust under the bed, who knows what's hiding under there? We have certain instincts that showed up a long time ago, back when our ancestors lived in caves and knew that if they slept like there was no tomorrow, there might not be. That's why they also knew it wasn't safe to sleep outside their cave. That's most of the reason behind this first night effect thing. If you sleep in your own bed, in a room you feel comfortable in, your brain is like, "Phew, okay, you're safe now." But if you go to a new place, nothing helps, not even a comfy bed, a silky pillow, or the fact that you're at your good friend's place. Your brain knows you're far away from your cave, so it can't relax and let you fully fall asleep. It's a little bit like with dolphins. One part of our brain is resting, but the other is carefully listening in case something unpredictable happens. Your brain won't bother you with this half the brain is sleeping and half not thing forever. When you spend 2 nights in a row in the same place, your brain is more likely to think, "Whew, it's safe here after all." Although that pile of dust still kind of worries me, and it'll probably let you fall asleep. Now, the first night effect is not that serious if you only experience it occasionally, but if you change locations really often, you could spend most of your time tired, unproductive, or facing some other issues. Our brain has some patterns that evolution gave it, but luckily, it's also quite flexible. You can trick it and help yourself overcome the first night effect. Since your brain is afraid of the fact that you're in an unknown space, you can make it more familiar and show your brain everything's okay. You might bring something you like with you. Maybe your favorite pajamas, your pillow, that soft blanket you wouldn't change for the world. Do you usually drink warm milk before going to sleep? Do the same thing at your new place. Help your brain recognize it's time to relax. Go to sleep at the same time you usually do. Have some exercise rituals before bed? Yeah, me neither. But whatever routine you have before going to sleep, do it at this new place too. If you're booking a room at a hotel, try to find one that has a bed similar to the one you have at home. If you usually sleep in a double bed, it may feel weird sprawled out in a king size. Or just bring along your favorite pajamas. It's cheaper. Nothing you do is guaranteed to help, but it's worth a shot. Side note, don't you get annoyed when you meet someone who can just sleep anywhere? It feels really, really great to lie down, tuck yourself under a warm pile of blankets, and... Oops, sorry. Anyway, sleep's important. We literally need it to survive, just like we need food or water. We spend around 1/3 of our lives sleeping. Scientists still don't know all the reasons why we sleep, but here's what they've got so far. We sleep to store energy. 8 hours of good sleep can produce enough energy for us to have an energetic, productive day. Our body needs to restore itself while sleeping. Hair and nails grow, muscles repair themselves. All that and more happens while you sleep, no effort needed. Then there's brain function. If you put a book under your pillow during the night hoping your brain will somehow read it and be prepared for tomorrow's final, Not gonna happen. But if you study hard and take in a lot of facts, a good night's sleep can definitely help you remember everything. A brown bat sleeps almost 20 hours a day, while a giraffe only sleeps a tiny bit, usually in mini 5-minute power naps. That poor giraffe doesn't know what it's missing. Cats definitely know how to enjoy life. They spend 2/3 of their life sleeping. Randy Gardner set the record for the longest period without sleep in 1964. He was 17 when he stayed awake for 11 days or 264 hours. Do not try this at home or anywhere. Peter Powers decided to set the opposite record and stayed asleep for 8 days straight. That's awesome. How come he didn't have to get up to use the bathroom? If you lie down in bed and fall asleep almost immediately, that means you're really, really tired and sleep deprived. Ideally, it should take you around 10 to 15 minutes to fall asleep. There are 2 specific times each day we feel really tired, 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. That's when we feel like taking a nap after lunch instead of getting on with our work. Show this video to your boss next time you're caught snoring in the office after your lunch break. We're actually the only mammals that delay sleep on purpose. And obviously the least cool mammals ever. Back in the day, only 15% of people dreamt in color. Now, 75% of us do that. Some folks think it's because our TVs are in color nowadays. Speaking of, we spend around 2 hours in dreamland every night. But if you want to remember your dreams, you should write them down right after you wake up. Wait too long and you'll forget all those awesome superpowers you had. Over the course of an average night, you might change sleeping positions around 20 times. Your favorite position can say a lot about your character. Lying on your back with your arms up by the pillow is called the starfish position. This type of sleeper tends to be a good listener and a selfless person who likes to help others. Also, this sleeper might let their guard down more easily. Then there's the free faller position, where you're on your stomach with your hands up by the pillow and your head turned to the side. Some say these sleepers don't take criticism well and tend to be pretty direct. Finally, the yearner is when you lie on your side with both of your arms stretched out in front of you. This type of sleeper is a bit complex, but also very open-minded. They're slow to make a decision, but they stick to it once it's made. Now, the kind and style of the jammies you wear to bed also says a lot, but we'll save that one for another video. So let me tell you a tale about tails. There are some cases of humans being born with a tail. There are about 25 confirmed cases known to scientists. Those born with tails, though, won't have any real benefit other than what the tailbone does for balance anyway. The tails have no function other than physically being there, as they have no bones. The tails only consist of nerves, vessels, and muscles. Now, do you find that you're a picky eater? Do you think that coriander tastes like soap? Or you can't stand pineapple on pizza? Really? Well, this may be due to what kind of taster you are. Up to 30% of people are considered super tasters and will experience different levels of enjoyment or disappointment from their foods. Food that is bitter to the super taster will likely be sweet to average tasters, who make up 40% of people. There are also 30% of people who are non-tasters and won't find anything too exciting. I guess you just have to develop a taste for that. The vast majority of people have brown eyes. About 79% of the world population share this eye color. Once, all humans only had the brown pigmentation, until around 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, and I wasn't around then, when humans migrated to Northern Europe. A mutation occurred, helping the eyes to adapt to the change of light. Blue eyes became the most common of the mutated coloration, and all of them today can be traced back to one ancestor from Europe. His name was Chadwick Abernathy. His friends called him Chad, and he was a boulder mover at Stonehenge. Well, not really. Today, blue eyes make up around 10% of the human population. Amber and hazel eyes each take up 5% respectively. Gray eyes are up to 3%, and the rarest of eye colors are green ones, consisting of only 2%. Rarer still is heterochromia iridum, where both eyes are of different colors. It's inherited and also affected by other genetic factors. Only 1% of the human population have this incredibly rare attribute. Do you have a small hole in the front of your ear above the ear canal? This is a preauricular pit. During the first 6 weeks of a child's development, long before being born, the auricle, which is the external part of your ear, will develop. The preauricular pit forms when the auricle doesn't fully fuse. This occurs in less than 1% of humans. Although there's speculation that having this little hole is the remnant of gills that we once had from our seafaring ancestors, there is nothing solid to confirm this theory. If you can lick your elbow easily or touch your thumb to your forearm, congratulations, you're among the minority of people. But some people bring flexibility to the next level. This condition is called hypermobility. It allows rare individuals to twist their bodies into weird positions, just like a snake, putting their head between their feet, doing a back bridge, and all sorts of splits. But in some cases, hypermobility can increase sensitivity because such people have a larger medulla. This brain area is responsible for processing emotions. 90% of people are right-handed and only 10% are left-handed. Yes, that adds up. But there's also a very small percentage of those who can use both hands equally well, including writing, drawing, and doing any tasks. Naturally, ambidextrous people account for only 1% of the entire population, which is about 70 million people. If you want to check whether you're one of them, try to write the same phrase with both hands, or draw a circle first with your right and then with your left hand. If there's no difference, congrats! By the way, these exercises are very good for balancing the hemispheres of the brain, regardless of which hand is your dominant one. And if you have 3 hands, well, that's a different video. Your fingernails grow faster on your dominant hand. In other words, if you write with your right hand, it's all right. And you'll have to trim those nails more often. Your fingernails also grow faster in the summer and during the day. Your skeleton will renew itself completely within 10 years, and yes, without surgery. An adult uses around 200 muscles just to make one step. So don't tell me I don't work out enough. Every minute, your body sheds more than 3,000 skin cells. It's almost 200,000 skin cells per hour and more than 9 pounds per year. Hey, it's the Shedding Skin Cells Weight Loss Plan. Ooh, sign up. But hey, don't worry, you still have about 300 million skin cells at any given moment. Plus, your skin completely renews itself every 28 to 30 days. The liver is the only human organ that can regenerate completely. As little as 25% of the original liver weight can get back to its full size. Some people can hear their eyeballs moving inside the eye sockets. Wow, that must be no fun. Unlike other parts of your body, your ears and nose never stop growing. Wow, that must be no fun. Your skin wrinkles if you stay in the water for too long, but not because it absorbs water. When your body's wet, wrinkled fingers and toes provide you with a better grip. You know, like when the treads on your car tires grip the road better when they're new. Your eyes are an amazing instrument. They can distinguish between 10 million different colors. Your brain uses more than 20% of your body's energy even when you're resting. When you're asleep, it still consumes almost as much power as when you're awake. It also burns around 330 calories per day at that. An adult person has about 25% of all their bones in the feet. Most of them are tiny but crucial. If these bones are out of alignment, so is the rest of the body. You breathe around 20,000 times a day, I've counted. Try not to stop. I actually set a personal best record today for consecutive days breathing, and I plan to top that tomorrow. Human bones are a real paradox. They're almost 5 times stronger than a steel bar with the same width, but can fracture on impact and are rather brittle. If a person has anosmia, also called smell blindness, they can't distinguish and detect smells, but they can still be smelly. Sorry. You start feeling thirsty when water loss is 1% of your body weight. More than 5% and you may faint. Water loss that's bigger than 10% of the body weight and dehydration can end a person, if you know what I mean. The strongest muscle in your body, based on its weight, is your jaw muscle. Yes, mine is way overdeveloped. At any moment, 50,000 cells in your body are getting replaced by new ones. Boy, that sounds like a company I used to work for. By the end of their life, the average person can recall up to 150 trillion pieces of information, except for where they left their car keys. Even if fingerprints are badly damaged, they still go back with their original pattern. Don't believe me? Hey, give it a whirl. Your brain's memory capacity is equivalent to about 4 terabytes on a hard drive, which is more than 8 million photos. People are the only living creatures that can naturally sleep on their backs. Even apes usually sleep in a sitting position, leaning on something. Don't wake them up. Your longest bone is your thigh bone, not your funny bone. And the tiniest one is in the ear. It's shorter than a grain of rice. Do you feel ticklish when you tickle yourself? Normally you wouldn't, unless someone else tickles you. It happens because the cerebellum area of the brain, which monitors movements, predicts the sensations caused by your own movements. Then it sends a signal to other parts of the nervous system to cancel these sensations. But some rare individuals can actually feel ticklish on their own. If you're not among them, touching a new texture that the brain doesn't yet recognize or using a scalp massager can help to excite your nerves and bring relaxation. Hey, you can give it a tickle test. If you want to check out the work of your vestibular system, try this simple trick. Stand on one foot and close your eyes. Most people lose balance at least during the first attempt. Your vestibular system includes many organs and systems throughout the body. Together, they allow your body to stay in balance in different positions. This system includes the inner ear and vision, which is why keeping balance is much easier in silence while your eyes are open. Can you wiggle your ears intentionally? Are you popular at parties for doing that? Congratulations! Around 22% of people on the earth are capable of wiggling one ear. As for moving both ears at once, only 18% can do that. Ear wiggling used to be a common thing for our distant ancestors. Scientists believe they could perform a variety of movements with their ears. The group of muscles responsible for wiggling are called the auriculars. Mostly don't need it today. But some people claim that everyone can learn to move their ears. It only takes time and practice. Unfortunately, we still cannot acquire this classy habit of twitching an ear toward a sound source, as dogs and cats do. Nor can we actually lend an ear to someone. They're challenging to remove and reattach. Well, here's some facts you'll find hard to digest. Your stomach has a pretty incredible capacity, being able to hold up to half a gallon of liquids. That's a whole large bottle of Coke. It's pretty hard to estimate how much hard food you can eat because it's processed with your teeth before it gets to your stomach. There's definitely not enough room for a turkey, but a good-sized chicken would probably fit in it. If you were asked where your stomach was, you would probably point to your tummy. Sorry, that's wrong. It's actually up here, hidden in between your ribs. Scientists believe that the appendix will disappear eventually. Nobody really knows why we need it, but some researchers claim it might have existed to help our ancestors digest tree bark. Because it's no longer part of our daily diet, the appendix isn't necessary and can disappear from our bodies without any consequences. The appendix isn't the only obsolete part of our body. Wisdom teeth aren't that useful either. Yeah, they used to come in handy whenever our ancestors lost some of their teeth, but the only thing they help us lose now is the money we spend extracting them. Almost all of our body is covered with hairs, even if we don't notice them. They grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. Check it out. See? Your liver acts as your own personal bodyguard, protecting you from toxins and many other things you don't want hanging around in your body. It's also pretty indestructible and can even regenerate. Only about 43% of you is actually you. Over 50% of the cells in your body belong to tiny little creatures that mainly live in your gut. Still, even though your own cells are fewer than microbial ones, There are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. See, you're not alone. With this in mind, your own genes are less than half of what you really consist of. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, you'll find between 2 to 20 million. If you sleep, it doesn't mean all of your body sleeps. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take a lot of time. The nose definitely gets a good rest while you're sleeping. Amazingly, your sense of smell basically deactivates at night. You wouldn't even be bothered if there was a really terrible smell in your bedroom. No comment. The nose is probably one of the most underappreciated parts of the body. We wouldn't even be able to enjoy eating without it. About 80% of the taste of any food is thanks to the nose and its ability to recognize odors. If you hold your nose while eating, you will taste almost nothing. With no sense of smell, you're likely to recognize food mostly by texture. So an onion might seem no different than a big refreshing apple. Yeah, try that and leave me a comment on how that goes. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish about 10,000 smells, but they were wrong. Recent research showed that people are actually able to distinguish between more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. Your nose just doesn't help you breathe and catch odors, it filters the air for sensitive throats and lungs. If we inhale dry air, the nose moistens it, cools it, and heats it if it's necessary. Also, the nose cleans the air of dirt. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at 30, and it starts shrinking by the age of 40. It happens to everyone and doesn't affect your mental strength in any way. Our brain can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. Don't even try to compare your brain with a phone capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some information, but sooner or later, you run out of space. To check your working memory capacity, try this test. Ask a friend to write a list of 10 words and read it to you. Most people recall 7 or fewer items from that list. Your RAM, or working memory, is an essential thing that we need to perform almost any everyday activity, including basic conversations, surfing the net, and even petting your dog. Our strongest and emotional memories are often fake. The central memory gives us the confidence to believe that we remember everything, even though most of the details are made up in our heads. Not only your brain shrinks as you get older, you too shrink dramatically. The bones get more brittle, the backbone gets compressed. A similar thing happens when you rest at night. Your bones kind of relax too. Because of this, you wake up taller in the mornings than you are at the end of the day. Among mammals, only humans can walk on 2 legs for their entire lives. You might think that kangaroos or gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a 3rd leg, and gorillas use their long arms to keep balance. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mostly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. The same reaction works in reverse too. When there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. The only bone to have a sense of humor in your body is inside your upper arm. That's why it's called the humerus. Okay, I made that one up. Moving along. The only bones that never grow are found in our ears. We can hear thanks to these tiny bones because they have adapted to transmit sound vibrations. Doctors call them the oscular chain. One of these hearing bones, the stapes, is the smallest bone in your entire body. It's no larger than a grain of rice. Our height, shape of our body, and skin color depend a lot on where our ancestors used to live, but we can adapt to new conditions even within our own lifespan. For example, if you move from plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you move from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will get darker to adapt. Our lifespan is programmed within our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. That means, if we could find a way to trick ourselves into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. Body fat isn't just a nuisance. It acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might protect your vitals from irreparable damage. Heads up! Your skull isn't a single bone. It actually consists of 28 different bones, many of which are fused together to protect your brain. The mandible, or the lower jaw, is the only skull bone that isn't fixed to the bone around it. It's attached with connective tissues and muscles. This is what makes it so mobile. You can move it in any direction you like. Hey, you can actually masticate with your mandible, another word for chewing. You see, the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs, they're in your head. The masseter is the main muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you chew your food. Now, we've got two really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection, so the reflex that protects them needs to be as fast as lightning. These muscles can shut the eyelids in less than 1/10 of a second. People with double-jointed thumbs can bend them backward. It looks super unusual and very few people can do it. Still, it's totally okay. Even though it looks painful, it actually doesn't hurt at all for someone with a double-jointed thumb. Now, we recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees, because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1 million combinations on average. You see?
There's more nerve cells and connections in your brain than there's stars in the Milky Way. If you decided to count them all, it'd take you 3,000 years. To make it easier for you, you have about 100 billion neurons in there. The brain can't actually feel pain. It does have a pain center, but it doesn't have pain receptors itself. When your head hurts, you can feel it because of the nerves, tissue, and blood cells around your brain. Your RAM, or working memory, is an essential thing that we need to perform almost any everyday activity, including conversations, surfing the net, and even petting your dog. Our strongest and emotional memories are often fake. The central memory gives us the confidence to believe that we remember everything, even though most of the details are made up in our heads. When we laugh, think, look at something, dream, move, or do some other activity with our body, small electrical and chemical signals run between neurons along those connections. And by that, neurons make and send more information than all the phones in the whole world. You're sitting somewhere outside and an insect lands on your leg. Your skin has sensory neurons and they quickly send the message to your brain at an impressive speed, 150 miles per hour. The brain sends back the message to your leg to shake the insect off very fast, and the speed that information travels is even bigger, 200 miles per hour. Our brain can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. Don't even try to compare your brain with a phone's capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some information, but sooner or later, you run out of space. To check your working memory capacity, try this test. Ask a friend to write a list of 10 words and read it to you. Most people recall 7 or fewer items from the list. Synesthesia is a special and rare ability when people can taste music or hear colors. only 1 in every 2,000 people has it. 5 basic senses are taste, touch, sight, sound, and smell. But people have more senses than that. Proprioception is when your body is aware of its parts and their position, even if you don't see them. Like if your arm is behind your back and you know it's there. If you were an octopus, you wouldn't know it. Because these creatures don't know their arms exist if they can't see them. Thermoception is your ability to sense temperature. Equilibrioception is a sense of balance. You also have nociception, which means you can feel pain. Then there's chronoception. That's how you can sense time passing by. There are even more senses found in the animal kingdom, but people don't have those. You can't recall a memory all by itself. When you're trying to think of one detail, like the color of the t-shirt your friend was wearing the other week, you'll remember some other details too. For example, the place where you saw him, things you were talking about. The hippocampus is the part of your brain that stores memories. It usually packs them together, including multiple small details. On average, taste buds last 10 days. One theory says déjà vu is some sort of a brain processing lag. Scientists think that it might happen when your brain is transferring information from one side to the other, and there's a split-second delay in that process. That means that your brain gets the same information twice and processes it as the event that happened before. It can create an illusion of falling. One of the theories that when you're dozing off, your brain sees the relaxing of your muscles as a sign you're in trouble and really falling. So it sends signals to the muscles to protect you by tensing up. You can physically see your nose, but the brain chooses to ignore it. Otherwise, it would stand in the way of your vision. Plus, it would be out of focus. Brain freeze is an annoying ice cream headache. That's how your brain tells you to slow down and maybe stop eating something that's so cold. People mostly need 7 minutes to fall asleep. This time gets shorter if you've just had a large, tasty meal. People used to dream in black and white much more than today. That's because they watched black and white TV. Around 12% of people can't dream in color nowadays. All your muscles relax at the same time, right after you've fallen asleep. Your brain thinks you're about to fall asleep and sends quick signals to all of your muscles to awaken them. That's why it sometimes feels like you're literally falling. The hypnic jerk is a twitch you can experience while falling asleep. It's an abrupt muscle movement that comes during the non-REM sleep phase. If you sleep, it doesn't mean all your body sleeps. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take a lot of time. By the time you wake up, you'll have forgotten 50% of your latest dream. After 10 minutes, you won't remember 90% of it. When you blush, your stomach lining goes red along with your face. It happens because your sympathetic nervous system's causing an increased blood flow throughout the body. Your hair follicles have the same receptors as your nasal passages. That's why your hair can detect scents too. Sandalwood can help you develop that superpower. The nose definitely gets a good rest while you're sleeping. Amazingly, your sense of smell basically deactivates at night. You wouldn't even be bothered if there was a terrible smell in your bedroom. No comment. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at 30. And it starts shrinking by the age of 40. It happens to everyone, and it doesn't affect your mental strength in any way. No matter how hard you try, you'll never be able to tickle yourself. It's because your brain prepares the body for tickling and helps you avoid the typical laughing reaction. We recognize only purple, blue, green, yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees, because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1 million combinations on average. You see? Heads up! Your skull isn't a single bone. It actually consists of 28 different bones, many of which are fused together to protect your brain. The strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs. They're in your head. The masseter is the main muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears?
Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you to chew your food. Now, we've got two really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection, so the reflex that protects them needs to be as fast as lightning. These muscles can shut the eyelids in less than 1/10 of a second. Our body is made of stardust. Really? The more complex elements in our body can only come about through supernovas. The first stars were just gassy lumps that were drawn together and, at some point, started the process of combustion. This finally led to a nuclear reaction in its center. Stars that were right there after the Big Bang were over 50 times bigger than our Sun is now. Inside of them, there was a constant process of making the elements, and those large stars were burning their fuel faster. Most of the elements in the human body were formed in those stars over billions of years ago. So you could realistically say that part of you is immortal. Cool, huh? So, you're positive that your body is all perfectly symmetrical. Surprise, surprise. Even some paired body organs still don't work equally and compete for dominance all the time. Your face, for example. You probably already know your best side, but if not, you can use special apps that will take a picture of your face and split the image into the left and the right section. Then it will mirror the images to create two separate symmetrical faces. One face will show you what you'd look like if the right side of your face were the dominant one, and the other will show the left side option. Usually, these two pictures don't look a lot like your actual face. But one of these faces reminds you a little more than the other. That's the one based on your dominant side. Some of the app developers analyzed the images and suggested that the left side of the face of most humans expresses emotions more intensively. That's why it seems more aesthetically pleasing to other people. But no worries, there are plenty of natural massage techniques and exercises to make your face look more symmetrical. For example, puckering your lips into a tight O will help balance facial muscles. Or you can open your eyes as widely as possible, stick out your tongue, and raise your eyebrows. This exercise also helps release muscle cramps from excessive talking and improper chewing. Want to make your jawline more defined and improve the tone of your vocal cords? Yogis have an exercise for that. They call it Jiva Mudra, or lion's pose. Open your mouth wide, lift your tongue, and roll it, and press it against the hard palate. Look at the tip of your nose while you're widening your mouth. Try to breathe only through your nose during this exercise. Try gradually inhaling deeper and holding the air for longer with each time. Eyes don't work in perfect symmetry either. Your brain has a preference for which one of them takes the most information. Let's find out your dominant eye right now. Keep your spine and head straight. Stick your arms out at eye level and make a triangle in the air in front of you with your hands. Focus it on an object in the distance, a clock for example. Close your left eye. If you can still see the object in the center of the triangle, your right eye is your dominant eye. If the object isn't there, your dominant eye is your left eye. If the object isn't centered, no matter what eye you close, you might have mixed ocular dominance. Was that fun? Here's another test for you. Extend your arm and form a circle with your thumb and index finger. Pick an object on a wall. Keep both eyes open and center this object inside the circle. If one eye is dominant, the object will move outside the circle. So, if for example the object seemed to move when you closed your right eye, then you have right eye dominance, and vice versa. The next test will help you quickly find out your dominant eyebrow. Stand in front of a mirror. Try to lift only one eyebrow, and then try to lift the opposite eyebrow. You probably have better control over one of them. But don't worry if you don't have control over either of them. You can develop this skill if you practice in front of a mirror. As for your hands, you probably already know your dominant one. There's no country or population on this planet where left-handed people are the majority. Most people in the world, about 85 to 90%, are right-handed. That's why most tools, like scissors or knives, and even books are designed with right-handed customers in mind. Studies found your dominant brain side defines which ear you use for your cell phone. Among the right-handed participants of the survey, 68% claimed they held their phones to their right ear, while 25% of polled people used the left ear, and only 7% had no preference. The result was different for those who are left-handed. 72% of polled people use their left ear while talking on their cell phones. 23% used their right ear, and 5% used both ears. It's all clear with hand dominance, but did you know you also have your dominant leg or foot? This information can be useful to you if you're engaged in sports like snowboarding or dancing, or you just do stretching to sit on a front split. Usually, if one is right-handed, then one must be right leg dominant, but of course, there are exceptions. You can check which of your feet is dominant. Squeeze a pen between your right big toe and the second toe and try to write your name on a piece of paper. Or if it's too hard, just try to draw a circle. Then try the same thing with your left foot. Now compare the two pictures. One of them probably looks better than the other, so your dominant foot is the one that writes better. Around 1 lucky percent of folks have equally dominant hands and feet and can use them equally well. The name of this rare condition is ambidexterity. You can try to develop this skill by special training techniques. Your dominant nostril is the nose hole you're breathing through the most. It changes several times during the day, depending on your brain activity. You might not notice when exactly your nostrils take turns in the lead role, but you can find out the current dominant nostril with this simple test. Place your finger on the right nostril and pinch it. Then inhale and exhale slowly through your left nostril only. And now, do the same thing with your left nostril. If it's easier to breathe through your right nostril, it means that it's more active at the moment. Of course, this test should only be done when you blow your nose and you're healthy. Otherwise, mucus can distort the result. Your body flexibility can also develop asymmetrically, especially if you don't do stretching exercises regularly. Can you grasp your left hand with your right hand behind your back? And what about the opposite position, when your left hand is reaching from above and the right one from below? If you find these two tasks equally easy, congrats! You're probably a superhero. To balance the flexibility in your left and right body sides, you can quit the habit of sitting or standing in asymmetrical poses for too long. Try to sit with an even spine and feel the pleasant vibe throughout your back. Avoid leaning on your right or left elbow. Or you can do that grasping exercise regularly to stretch more. If you prefer to sleep on the side, you probably have a favorite one. Your muscle memory forces your body to return to the sleeping position that was recorded as the most repeatable. So, if you ever decide to retrain yourself to sleep on your back, get ready to spend a few nights feeling uncomfortable. But if fetal position is your thing and you don't want to get rid of it, experts recommend putting some pillows between your knees and arms to minimize tension. Now, what about your ears? Do you think they hear equally well? Well, it depends on many factors. The left and right ears process sound a little differently. The right ear responds more to speech and logic, while the left ear is more focused on emotional perception and music. Scientists believe it's because the left hemisphere of the brain processes primarily speech, while the right hemisphere processes creative and emotional signals like music and other arts. When a male hears a female voice, the auditory section of his brain gets activated. This means that female speech sounds more like music for the male brain. But when the same male brain hears a male voice, it will use the brain part responsible for speech processing. One of the explanations of this phenomenon is that the female voice is just more complex than the male voice. The vocal cords and larynx of women and men have different sizes and shapes. Also, females tend to have a greater melody in their voices, causing a more rich range of sound frequencies. If you don't have special equipment but want to check if it's true, try tracking your overall sensation in the ears and the brain while listening to music. Then, listen to some male's voice and feel the difference in sensations. Memorize or write down this difference, and then listen to some melodic female voices. Try to understand if it feels more like listening to music or speech. And finally, your heart is a dominant body organ 24/7. It's the only muscle that never gets tired. So it makes sense to always treat it gently.
Unlike our primate pals, many people still have these foot arches. They help us move. This arch is like a built-in shock absorber for your feet. It's what allows us to bounce. There's another one. It's called the transverse arch, running side to side on the top of your foot. Think of it like a bridge that helps keep your foot in shape. Research says this arch is a big deal too. It's responsible for about 40% of your foot's stiffness. Simply put, it's like the scaffolding that holds your foot together. When scientists snipped the transverse arch, the foot lost a lot of its firmness. But when they cut the bottom arch, it wasn't that dramatic. So, is it a modern human thing? Nope. These arches didn't just pop up yesterday. The transverse arch has been around for 3 million years. The bottom arch showed up about 1.8 million years ago. We might as well continue with another element of our feet before moving up to other parts. Our pinky toes are also more important than they seem. Whether you were born without one or have lost it, you can still walk. But pinky ones are important for keeping us on our feet. They provide balance. Inside your foot, you've got 26 bones that team up to make sure you don't topple over. Small toe is a part of this balance work. Our ape ancestors needed their toes to grab, claw, and swing from trees. Today, we've traded our tree climbing skills for comfy couches and binge watches. Okay, let's move up a bit and talk about the appendix. You might think that it's useless, but nope. When a human is in their mommy's belly, this organ starts to do its job. Around the 11th week of development, it starts churning out special cells that produce helpful hormones and compounds. The appendix helps train our immune system's troops, ensuring they're top-notch defenders. It also collects all sorts of foreign substances, aka antigens, from our digestive tract. Yet, as diets evolved, this piece shrank like a deflating balloon. Unlike most other vestigial structures, the appendix isn't always harmless. It can turn into an angry little fireball. By the way, vestigial organs are the ones that have lost their primary ancestral function. These structures mostly lack an apparent purpose. Another famous vestigial example is wisdom teeth. Those are pointless and have been causing us trouble for ages. Yet nearly 95% of us have them, and 90% might even have to deal with the drama of an impacted wisdom tooth at some point. If you don't have them, you might consider yourself lucky. Here's an additional interesting fact about wisdom teeth. Even though your teeth have a mineral softer than what's in shark teeth, new tests show that they're just as resilient. The coating on shark teeth is actually similar in hardness to the enamel on a human wisdom tooth. It's because their surfaces are made of mineral crystals held together by proteins. These prevent them from shattering easily upon impact. So the difference in how we and sharks use our teeth comes down to their design, not their toughness. Anthropologists have examined ancient skeletons. They think our ancestors needed these extra teeth to chew tough stuff, like roots and raw meat. Back then, those extra teeth came in handy. But then, we discovered cooking, and suddenly, our food got softer, and our jaws got smaller. Geneticists have their own take on this subject. It involves a gene called MYH16, which seems to play a role in both brain size and jaw characteristics. Yet, the exact part it played in our evolutionary story is still a bit of a mystery. Now, another pointless thing is the eyelid. Well, not the regular eyelid. You know, that little pink thing hiding in the corner of your eye. Birds and some other furry pals use it to fend off dust and debris trying to mess with their eyes. But in us humans, it's mostly vestigial. Meet the palmaris longus. About 85% of us still carry it around. Maybe you also have it. You can test it by putting your hand on a flat surface and making your pinky and thumb meet. If you spot a little tendon band doing the limbo in the middle of your wrist, then you've found it. It was there for gripping stuff and swinging around like Tarzan. We can carry on with the grasping trick. Even before you're born, around 16 weeks into your time inside your mom's tummy, you're already practicing your grip. You start by grabbing onto the umbilical cord. When you finally arrive in the world, This reflex helps you hold on to things. Fun fact, small monkeys can hang on one hand for ages, thanks to a similar trick. Yet, we humans lose this super grip when we're around 3 months old. When you're still in your mother's womb, you also have a mini tail. But as you grow, it disappears, and those tiny vertebrae become your tailbone or coccyx. Humans and our ape cousins don't have tails like other animals. Our ears, too, have vestigial muscles. They help animals hear better and express their feelings. But in humans, these ear muscles don't do much. We've figured out other ways to listen and show our emotions. Yet some of us can still wiggle our ears with practice. Surprisingly, toenails also count as a vestigial thing. I mean, they function as the initial line of defense. They protect the body against harmful microorganisms. In our evolutionary journey, we used our fingernails and toenails for defense, digging, and climbing. In the modern world, fingernails still come to our rescue, whether it's for peeling fruit or that sweet sensation of scratching an itch. Yet, toenails have retired. But hey, we can apply nail polish to them. For fashion's sake, they certainly work for many people. It's not just humans who have useless limbs or organs. In 1798, an anatomist examined a peculiar bird incapable of flying. He documented his observations. This avian species was none other than an ostrich. Ostriches and cassowaries are just a few examples of birds possessing vestigial wings. Anatomically speaking, these are rudimentary wings, incapable of granting flight to these hefty creatures. Yet they aren't entirely devoid of function. They serve the purpose of maintaining balance during rapid running. Plus, they elaborate courtship displays, helping birds attract potential mates. Now, when it comes to animals, a lot of them glow too. Around 76% of ocean animals, including jellyfish, worms, sharks, and sea stars, are bioluminescent. They have a compound called luciferin that reacts with oxygen to create light. And for them, it serves such purposes as stunning predators, attracting prey, or warning others of danger. We humans can glow too. Unfortunately, this glow is super faint. Our eyes can't see it. Our bodies emit light, but it's about 1,000 times dimmer than what our eyes can detect. Scientists found that our glow changes throughout the day. It's the faintest in the morning and the brightest in the late afternoon. Our faces glow more than the rest of our bodies. They think it's because our faces get more sun exposure and have melanin, which has components that can boost light production. Some body tricks distinguish us from the rest of the animal kingdom. For instance, do you know that humans are the only animals capable of blushing? It seems we've got the exclusive rights to this rosy-cheeked phenomenon. When we find ourselves in an embarrassing situation, our blood vessels dilate. That's what gives us those blushes. Embarrassment is a pretty complex emotion. It's all about understanding what others think of us. This might be too advanced for other animals. Interestingly, bald uakari monkeys can also blush, but not in the same sense. For them, this is a show of their good health. Speaking of good health, we should honor our gut. Your gut includes the stomach, liver, and more. It's often called the second brain. This second brain has its own nervous system. It has 100 million messengers. They send info to the rest of your body. Even if the gut-brain connection is cut, it keeps working. It ensures your digestive system functions on its own.
So, check this out. There are people who can bend down their pinky without bending the ring finger. But most find it hard or even impossible to do. When they move their middle or little finger, they tend to slightly bend their ring finger too. Yup, me too. Globe luxation is an extremely rare condition when people can make their eyes protrude out of their sockets. Unfortunately, this ability comes with downsides. It can cause numerous eye issues. Some indigenous groups of people, like Tibetans, can survive at altitudes as high as Mount Everest. This rare ability most likely appeared after years of evolution. The ancestors of modern Tibetans lived in high regions for thousands of years and developed red blood cell adaptations, making it possible to survive with dangerously low levels of oxygen. The Bajau are sea nomads living in Southeast Asia. These people have evolved an extra-large spleen, serving as a repository of oxygen-rich blood cells. Thanks to that, they can easily spend 5 to 10 minutes fishing underwater without coming up for air even once. Now, about 14% of the population don't have a palmaris longus muscle. Oh, it's actually a rudimentary part of the body, and the need for it disappeared in the process of evolution. So, if you don't have this muscle, worry not. Its absence doesn't affect the work of your forearm anyway. About 5 to 37% of people don't have wisdom teeth from birth. These teeth are not really needed anymore. They were important for our ancestors since they helped to chew hard food like nuts, roots, and meat, and saltwater taffy. Nah, I made that up. But since most of the food we eat today is processed, wisdom teeth are now a mere atavism. Most people have just one clockwise hair whorl, but 5 out of 100 people have a double crown. And if both whorls are directed counterclockwise, this makes a person even more unique. Some scientists think there's a genetic link between hair whorl direction and handedness. A bit more than 8% of right-handed people have counterclockwise hair whorls, but in the left-handed, this number grows up to 45%. A man's brain gets older faster than a woman's. As men age, they start complaining about memory problems and lack of concentration more and more often. At the same time, women don't have such acute problems with memory, but they feel depressed more often. Which one would you choose? Now, when someone is lying, their own nose gives them away. Psychologists from the University of Granada have discovered that when a person tells a lie, the temperature around their nose and in the inner corners of their eyes goes up. This phenomenon got the name of, wait for it, the Pinocchio effect. Japanese people have particular bacteria in their intestines. These bacteria help them to digest sushi. The Japanese have been eating raw seaweed for centuries. Microorganisms dwelling on the surface of the seaweed got into their bodies and actively developed. Nowadays, the bacteria help Japanese people digest raw food and prevent different problems connected with food. So, people have as many hairs on their bodies as chimpanzees. The hair count of a person and a chimp is approximately the same. The only difference is that human body hair is mostly useless and so fine that it's almost impossible to see. Humans don't have more genes than other species. In fact, people have fewer genes than a worm. Tomatoes also have many more genes than you do. But we are such complicated creatures. Well, recently, scientists have concluded that the number of genes that a genome contains isn't closely connected with the complexity of a living being. Let's take a breather. Speaking of which, your left lung consists of 2 lobes, while your right lung is divided into 3 parts. Plus, the lung on the left is a bit smaller since it has to make room for your heart. Your lungs also contain around 1,500 miles of airways. It's more than half the distance between New York and Los Angeles. There are also more than 300 million alveoli, which are tiny balloon-shaped air sacs in your lungs. People have 5 most obvious senses: vision, smell, touch, hearing, and taste. But that's not all. How about thermoception, the sense of heat? Or nociception, the perception of pain? Or your body awareness, proprioception? To figure out what it is, close your eyes and touch your nose. Got it? That's proprioception in action. This list can be much longer. Some experts state people have from 21 to 53 senses. So your fingers get all wrinkly after you spend too much time in the water. Pruny fingers are caused by the narrowing of your blood vessels. When you stay in the water for a long time, your nervous system makes your blood vessels shrink. Your body sends the blood away from that area, and this loss of blood makes your vessels thinner. The skin starts folding over them, forming those funny wrinkles. Scientists think this process helps us have a better grip when our hands and feet are wet. There are 3 kinds of cone cells in the average person's eyes. These cones help to recognize the colors in the blue, red, and green spectrums. Thanks to them, most people can distinguish around 1 million different shades. But those with tetrachromacy have 4 cones in their eyes. This feature allows them to see up to 100 million different hues. This vision anomaly is extremely rare. and is much more common in women than in men. Interestingly, most people with tetrachromacy don't even realize they see the world brighter than others. Now, not all people have round pupils. 2 people out of every 10,000 have unusually shaped pupils. Most commonly, they resemble keyholes. This eye disorder is called coloboma. Interestingly, some people with this condition don't have any problems with their vision. Only 3 to 22% of people in the world have Morton's toe. It's a foot structure where the second toe is longer than the first one. Michelangelo's David and the Statue of Liberty both have this unusual body feature. Hey, toes up! In some people, saliva accumulates in a gland under their tongue. It can then get propelled out in a stream when a person presses on this gland. If the mouth is open at the moment, a jet can reach several feet. This process, called gleeking, can occur spontaneously. A person accidentally pushes their tongue against the gland while eating, yawning, talking, or cleaning their teeth, and voila! Up to 35% of people can gleek, but just 1% can do it on command. I had a friend in college who did that. Yeah, it was weird. About 18 to 35% of people have an interesting reaction to sunlight. They sneeze. This phenomenon has its own name, the photic sneeze reflex. In the Greek language, it's called sun sneezing. Achoo! Just like salamanders regrow their tails, humans might be able to regenerate cartilage. That's the rubber-like stuff around your joints. Recently, scientists have discovered that cartilage might be able to repair itself, most effectively at the ankle, not that well in the knee, and least effectively in the hip. The human brain is 73% water, just like your heart. That's why if your brain loses even 2% of liquid, you start feeling exhausted. This also makes your memory get worse, shortens your attention span, and puts a damper on your mood. So drink up! Your brain is constantly processing tons of visual information, around 600 million bits per minute. It all starts when the light goes through the cornea, your eye's clear protective outer layer. Then the light turns into electrical signals. They travel to your brain and it interprets them into the images you see. It takes milliseconds for this complicated process to happen. People who live to be 110 years and older, called supercentenarians, may have a secret. Researchers have discovered that their immune cells, called T helpers, might change and adapt to the late stages of aging. These cells are likely to protect them from viruses and other health problems. We've become impressive multitaskers thanks to technology, or rather, it only seems so. The human brain can't concentrate on 2 things at once. What it can do is to switch between several tasks really fast, but it makes your attention span shorter and harms your short-term memory and the ability to learn. So put that phone down. Hey, can you speak up? I just ate an entire pizza. That's because after eating a hearty meal, our hearing tends to be a bit less sharp. During digestion, most of our bloodstream is directed toward the stomach, which takes away a bit from all the other organs. So, next time you want to go listen to your favorite band at a live concert, make sure to eat a lighter meal to keep your ears pitch perfect. On top of our stomach and left kidney, we have a magical organ that can grow back if we remove a part of it. Our liver can regenerate itself by making new cells called hepatocytes. They begin to multiply once the liver is damaged. The seriousness of that damage defines if it can regenerate completely and the amount of time it takes to do so. Ever wondered what's worse for your body? No sleep or no food? Turns out the lack of sleep is more dangerous. That's because if you don't rest, your body becomes exposed to a lot more risks. After 24 hours without any shut-eye, you can start to have memory problems and find it difficult to concentrate. At just 17 hours without sleep, you start to feel tired and groggy, irritable, tense, and more emotional. I need a nap. Your pain receptors also become more sensitive, which means everything hurts a bit more than it should. Oh, and it also affects your hearing, too. What? On the other hand, you can be well into your 24-hour period with no food before your body realizes you've stopped eating. In the first 8 hours, you just keep digesting the last meals you had. After those first hours, you start to use stored fats for energy. Not eating for more than 24 hours means that your body will start eating away at its own protein, which means you literally start to lose muscle. Rainwater isn't always safe to drink. It can sometimes hold harmful bacteria and viruses. Also, in heavily polluted locations, it may even meet other harmful materials. Some communities out there do depend solely on rainwater as their primary source of hydration. But does rainwater have any other health benefits? Not really, according to current studies. Some of those risky substances may be removed from rainwater if you boil it, but it's best to stick to the safer side and only drink water from sources that are 100% safe for human consumption. Now, we produce sweat, mostly to regulate our body temperature and for some added moisture, like the one we need in the palms of our hands for a better grip. But sweat doesn't just show up on our skin. It comes out of around 5 million pores on our bodies. We're literally stepping on a quarter of our bones each day. We have just over 200 bones in our body, but about a quarter of those are in a very small surprising area – our feet. Since we have 26 bones in each foot, we end up with literally 52 in both. Now, our eyes produce tears for many reasons, like protecting themselves from infection or clearing up debris, such as smoke and dust, or when your baby done you wrong. But the number of tears we produce is quite surprising, up to 30 gallons per year. That's almost enough to fill a bathtub. Wow, that is heartbreaking. Our blood pressure wakes up hours before we do. That's because in the morning, the body produces a bunch of hormones like adrenaline and noradrenaline. They help give us the energy boost we need during our morning hours, but they also increase our blood pressure, which is usually higher between 6 a.m. and noon. During the night, since we should technically sleep and perform no physical activity, our blood pressure drops down by up to 20%. Speaking of our vital fluid, our blood accounts for about 10% of our total body weight. We tend to think of our body weight as being mostly made up of muscles, fat stores, and bones. But there's a lot more to it. In a fit adult person, bones make up 15% of the total body weight. About 40 to 45% is left to muscles, about 15% to fat deposits, and the rest are stuff like skin, tendons, hair, and other yucky things. Let's see. That adds up to, 100%. Your lungs aren't twins, they're siblings. That's because they aren't the same size or shape. Your right lung is bigger and tends to weigh more, and your heart is to blame for it since your ticker tilts to the left a little bit. This creates a small indentation in the left lung called the cardiac impression, which is also what funny heart doctors do at comedy clubs. The right lung may be bigger, but it's a bit shorter since it needs to make room for the liver. Doesn't your house have a liver room? Many of your body measurements are quite symmetrical in surprising ways. If you were to stretch out both of your arms, your wingspan, and measure it, it should show how tall you are. Based on these similar measurements, specialists can even produce theories about what ancient humans used to look like. Looks like we've evolved to be increasingly symmetrical to appear more attractive and healthier to attract mates. More so. Since we've evolved to also walk on two legs, our symmetrical features help us to move around with the least amount of energy because it creates balance. Now, humans aren't natural champions when it comes to the scent of smell, that's for sure. But our noses can pick up about 1 trillion different scents. Scientists are still performing research on this subject and believe the number may be even higher. Some dog breeds may be able to notice scents somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000 times better than we do, but turns out the best nose in the animal kingdom may be attributed to the elephant because of its staggering number and type of olfactory receptor genes, over 10,000, while humans and chimpanzees have less than 400. We tend to look at our pinkies as our most delicate fingers, but we do have more power in them than we think. Turns out that should our pinky finger be lost or affected, the overall strength of our grip may decrease by up to 33%. The liquid in our stomach, made of hydrochloric acid, potassium chloride, and sodium chloride, is way more powerful than any acidic food you can think of, like lemons, pineapples, or tomatoes. The pH of healthy stomach acid should be between 1 and 3, so if you think about it, it's just below that of battery acid. Our hair strands are strong too, so strong that research is performed on them to duplicate their resistance into human-made materials. A healthy head of hair should be able to withstand up to 26,000 pounds. It's due to a little protein in the hair strand called keratin, which you can also find in your nails and skin. Now, only about 1/3 of us humans have perfect vision. There are a lot more glasses and contacts out there than you'd think, making up about 66%. Apart from different eye conditions, our vision also gets worse with age. When we're born, our heads amount to 1/4 of our total length. By the time we reach 25, our head will only be 1/8 of it. That's because our heads won't change their size a lot as we grow older, as opposed to the rest of our body, mostly when it comes to the legs and torso. Our brains are these super powerful computers, and a single human brain cell can hold 5 times as much information as the entire Encyclopedia Britannica. Maybe you remember that. We've yet to pinpoint the exact amount of data it can support, but in electronic terms, the storage capacity of the brain is around 2,500 terabytes. For comparison, the National Archives of Britain, which keeps over 900 years of history, only takes up 70 terabytes. It's probably the reason our brains need the most amount of oxygen compared to other organs. About 20% of the total oxygen that enters the bloodstream, and that's despite the fact that it makes up only 2% of our body mass. Our normal activities, plus the effect of gravity, make the cartilage in our ankles, knees, hips, back, and neck slowly compress. Once you rest overnight, the cartilage goes back to normal. On average, you are somewhere around 0.4 inches taller in the morning than you are later at night. And that's why they call me Stretch. You know when you have a stuffy nose and all you can think about are the nights you've taken smooth breathing for granted? Our bodies do a lot of work to keep us comfortable every day. So, in the spirit of staying grateful, let's take a look at a couple of these amazing things the human body does every minute. Starting with our eyes, which are constantly relaying loads of visual info to the brain. The cornea acts like an entrance gate, skillfully bending light. The iris, or the colorful part, adjusts the light dose, and the lens focuses the rest onto the retina. This last one then transforms all that light into electrical signals that are sent to the brain for interpretation. Sounds like a lot of work, but it all gets done in milliseconds. This means that in just a single minute, our brain handles somewhere around 600 million bits of visual data. More than half our bodies are made of water. 55% if you're a lady and 65% if you're a gentleman, to be precise. To make sure this water balance is always in check, our bodies come equipped with a hydration monitor. It's always looking into how much water we're losing through things like sweating or even breathing. If as little as 1% of the water quantity goes missing, we'll start to feel thirsty. We also wouldn't be here if it weren't for those hearts pumping in our chests. Well, actually, just one heart per person. The speed at which it pumps can change depending on how fit you are, your feelings, your size, and even if you're doing a new yoga pose that requires a bit more effort. On average, doctors say adults have anywhere between 60 to 100 heartbeats per minute when they're resting. Now, the fitter you get, the less pressure you put on your heart, and you might even end up having a heart rate as low as 40 beats per minute. Each time this organ gets a little thump, it's pushing about 2.4 ounces of blood around your body. If your resting heart rate is 80 beats per minute, your heart's pushing 1.5 gallons of blood every 60 seconds. Ever wonder how fast your body bounces back after losing blood? We've got on average about 10 pints of it in our adult bodies. When one of them is lost, our bodies start working hard to replace it. And it's faster than you'd imagine. Within 24 hours, the volume loss is replaced. And within a few weeks, we're as good as new. That's because every second, our bodies make some 2 million fresh red blood cells. That's 120 million every minute. When it comes to white blood cells and platelets, the process is even faster. Our breathing mechanism is fascinating too. For grown-ups, the regular breath count is about 12 to 20 breaths per minute. Infants, however, have a faster rate of 30 to 60 breaths per minute. When you take in air, it requires the effort of an entire team. Your brain's command center sends signals down to your diaphragm, telling it to flatten out. Your ribs and abdominal muscles adjust to allow your chest to expand, pulling the air into your lungs. Breathing out is a bit easier. Your used-up air gets pushed out by your elastic lungs. But when you're putting in a bit more effort, that's when your abs help a bit more in the exhale process. Now, when it comes to reading, our brains can amp up that skill, sometimes reaching up to 1,000 words per minute. If you do the math, it means your brain can read a 300-page book in just 2.5 hours. One interesting feature about how our brain processes reading is that it doesn't necessarily do it in a straight line. In fact, our eyes do these unique movements called saccades. They're quick jumps across the text back and forth. Sometimes it's a big leap, other times a tiny hop. They help us soak in tons of information fast, and they happen a bunch of times every second. How big or small the jump is depends on how good we are at reading and how familiar we are with the topic at hand. Do you want to find out more about a variety of topics, like science, pop culture, or history? Well, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with our latest videos. Our skin is the largest organ we own and is perpetually shedding around 30,000 cells every 60 seconds. Most of the time we don't even notice, but our faces and bodies are constantly removing layers. Yep, a lot of that dust around your house is you. It's a month-long journey for those fresh skin cells to pop up to the surface, and that process speeds up or slows down with age. During our 60s or even later, it can take up to 8 weeks for cell turnover, and that buildup of skin makes your complexions look a bit dull. Thankfully, there are a lot of products we can use these days to help with dry skin, like moisturizers and serums. You can't talk without your tongue. Well, you can technically, but most people won't understand a word you're saying. On any day, our tongue teams up with our lips and teeth to turn throat sounds into words that make sense. The tongue itself is flexible and speedy, capable of letting out more than 90 words a minute, using a variety of over 20 moves. While we can vocalize without using the tongue, we need it to pronounce consonants like T, D, L, and R, or if you're a pirate, R. This important organ is the same reason parrots can so easily imitate us, though most of them have no idea what they're saying. These birds have a thick tongue, and even though they've got fewer muscle moves, it helps them mimic human speech quite accurately. So be careful what you say around them. Humans also blink 15 to 20 times each minute. It might not sound like a lot, but it does mean we're spending about 10% of our awake time with our eyes shut. For many years, scientists believed that blinking served a single purpose: to keep our eyes moist. That's mostly why we produce tears, by the way. And with the help of our eyelids, this creates a little cover for the whole eyeball, preventing it from feeling itchy. However, blinking does more. A study from the past decade pointed out that when we blink, our brain hits a mini reset button. It powers down some parts linked to vision and attention. And since attention messes with how we perceive time, blinks could be like these time travel moments for our brains, or mini power naps if you like. Now, on average, people have around 35 to 48 thoughts per minute. It depends on a variety of things, like what we've been through, how we're feeling, and even where we are. When it comes to thought formation, we do know that brain cells can communicate. But understanding exactly how our ideas pop up in our minds is still a bit of a mystery. Our brain features many neurons, these fascinating cells shooting out electrical charges to talk to each other. It's these neurons that spill out brain chemicals called neurotransmitters. Think of it as passing notes that create electric signals, and as these signals surf through thousands of neurons, like a wave, thoughts pop up in our heads. Now, each time you munch on a snack, you're fueling up this power plant, which is your body. One single calorie from your food is around 4,200 energy units called joules. If you're eating 2,000 calories a day, you're transforming that into almost 6,000 joules every minute. And here's how everything happens. After you eat, the food follows its journey through your mouth, down into your stomach, and makes its way into small pieces in your bloodstream. Imagine tiny delivery trucks carrying oxygen and other useful substances to your cells. Once inside, these cells have many factories inside called mitochondria. They're responsible for turning those deliveries into adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. This is our cell's energy currency. It's used to make more cells, it helps us move, or even send messages through electrical impulses to other cells. Come to think of it, this sure makes me want to be nicer to my body for all it does. How about you? Hey, not to freak you out or anything, but every second, your body creates 25 million new cells. I'll do the math for you. That means that in about 15 seconds, you'll have produced more cells than there are people in the United States. Think about that next time you feel you haven't been productive enough. It may account for only 2% of our body mass, but our brains actually take up 20% of our blood supply and oxygen. Our brains can also produce enough energy to supply a light bulb. That is, when we're awake. Ever thought about what the largest human organ is? It's your skin, and is thickest on the palms of your hands and soles of your feet. I know, I hate dusting too, but you are particularly responsible for that layer of fluff on your TV screen, you know. Every human being sheds about 600,000 particles of skin every hour, and most of the dust around your house is actually composed of that. So yes, we're all rather flaky. These days, it's considered more of a beauty mark, but the reason why people are born with a Cupid's bow is actually quite intriguing. As our features start to develop before we're even born, it appears that the Cupid's bow is actually the place where our face, well, zips up. The right side of the face and the left side of the face, that is. While in humans, it may not be that obvious. If you look at your dog's nose, you'll see it has a straight vertical line just under the nostrils. That's right, dogs have this zip too. Did you know you were born with more bones than you have today? At birth, we have somewhere around 300 bones, but as we age, some of them fuse together. That's why in adulthood, we end up having about 200 bones. Although your teeth are technically part of your skeletal system, they're not actually bones. They do look sort of similar and do share some characteristics, like being the hardest element in your body. Why the misconception, though? Well, it's mostly because both teeth and bones contain calcium. To be a bit more specific, about 99% of the body's calcium is in your bones and teeth. The remaining calcium is in your bloodstream. So what makes them different, you might ask? It's in how the bones and teeth heal and how you should take care of them. While bones can repair and heal themselves, your teeth aren't able to do that. That's why we have dentists. We don't only have unique fingerprints, our tongues are one of a kind as well. Research has shown that those approximately 10,000 taste buds on our tongues are laid out in a unique pattern, specific for each one of us. About 80% of what you believe is taste is actually smell. The combination of taste and smell that we perceive is what we come to know as flavor. It's probably because our sense of smell is around 10,000 times stronger than our sense of taste. So, the next time you're tuning in your favorite song, try to pay some attention to your heartbeat. Do you hear that? Yep, that's right. While listening to some music, your heartbeat will sync with the rhythm of the song. And speaking of that healthy ticker of yours, just in case you're wondering, it beats on average about 75 times per minute. This means that in any given year, a human heart can pump enough blood to fill an Olympic-sized pool. What's even more fascinating is that if you were to connect all your blood vessels end to end, you'd be able to circle the Earth 4 times. But that would really hurt, so don't try that. We are the only species on this planet to have a chin. There's still some debate around this subject in the scientific community, but one of the reasons seems to be to make our jaws stronger. As humans have continued to evolve, their teeth and the muscles in their jaws got smaller and smaller, so they needed something to help with increased jaw resistance. That transparent part of your eye is called the cornea, and it helps the light go through. It's also the only part of your body that isn't connected to any blood supply. Why? because it's especially designed to get its oxygen straight from the surrounding atmosphere. If you took out all the fat found in a healthy human body, it would be enough to make 7 bars of soap. We also produce enough saliva in our lifetimes to fill 2 swimming pools. Great expectorations. Ever wondered how much we actually eat during our whole lifetimes? I'll spare you the math. An average-sized person eats nearly 66,000 pounds of food throughout the whole course of their lifetime. How much is that for scale? About 6 elephants. And that ain't peanuts. Each of us carries around 4 pounds of bacteria on average at any given time in our bodies. But hey, don't go running to the doctor just yet. Most of that bacteria is actually good and have specific functions in the human body, like digestion and our immune systems. If you want to have an accurate depiction of your height, make sure you measure yourself in the morning. That's because you're about 0.4 inches taller right when you wake up. Trust me, it isn't magic. It's merely because, throughout the day, the soft cartilage between your spinal bones gets squashed down and compressed, making you seem shorter by the time you go to bed. We know that we have some sort of energy moving around our bodies, so we actually do emit a tiny amount of light. It's too weak for our own eyes to see, though, but if you think about it, you're actually glowing as we speak. The humorist and author Mark Twain once said, "Man is the only animal that blushes, or needs to." How true. But not all humans can blush, and those that do blush to different degrees. Is there some sort of evolutionary reason for why we blush? It seems so. Blushing is a way for us to communicate without using any words, just like dogs wag their tails when they're happy or excited. So basically, blushing can be translated to "I'm embarrassed," similar to how we shiver when we're cold. If the human eye was a camera, it would have about 576 megapixels. Our vision of the world changes throughout our lives. As soon as we're born, we see the world upside down for a bit. Our brain is programmed to show the inverted image formed on our retina by the convex eye lens. But that doesn't kick in immediately after birth. Hey, I'm sure you enjoy that weekly cardio and weightlifting, but the strongest muscle in the human body is definitely not the one you've been working on. It's actually in your jaws. Your jaws are designed similarly to a nutcracker. Why? So you can get powerful bites with as little energy as possible. The fastest muscle is located in your eyes. That's probably how we came up with the expression "in the blink of an eye" for when something happens really quickly. Did you know that your nose comes with a built-in reset feature? It happens when you sneeze. Sneezing is basically your nose's way of getting rid of all the bad particles it has inhaled up to a certain point. If you think that's bad, it's not. Did you also think your pinky finger is something weak and pretty much useless? Well, it actually packs up to 50% of the strength in your hand. We still haven't figured out precisely why people yawn. Now, we aren't the only creatures to do it. Baboons, guinea pigs, and the Siamese fighting fish yawn to warn other animals to stay away. Penguins seem to yawn during courtship rituals, and snakes yawn at times after a good meal. Boy, there's a happy snake. Some theories suggest it helps us get more oxygen in, while others indicate that it helps with regulating our body temperatures. Either way, we still don't know for sure. Our ears and noses are the only organs that continue to grow throughout our lifetimes. Our eyes stay more or less the same size as we grow up. By the time we're 3 months old, our corneas should technically reach their full size. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give